We're going to give it a couple more minutes to get everybody in here. Hello. Okay, everybody raise your hand if you can hear me. Oh, such good students every time. We are really excited to be here today. Happy to see all you guys again, and anybody who's new, who hasn't been here before. This is 5 years for us. So, I know, right? We have the original director in the building somewhere. I saw her earlier, but I was not there at the first meeting 5 years ago, but I was there at the first in-person meeting at Bowie State. That was my very first time being part of LSIC. And even then, I feel like you could see what it was going to be, and what it was becoming, and all the great things that were coming of this community. It's really been a big, exciting year. There's a lot of things that have happened since we were here last spring. There's a lot of things that are going to continue to happen through the end of the year. We got some launches and some landings and some great things to see. Being part of this community to me is exciting. It's infectious. There's so many teams coming together. And I say teams because I think in a lot of times we say companies. But if you look here across LSIC, these are companies coming together and building bigger teams, building bigger missions, and getting us to the moon. I don't want to say a lot because we have a lot to get into today, but I do want to say that we need to continue to dream bigger, move faster, and work harder, because there's a lot more to come. We've got at least 5 more years to go, right? Okay, so today we're going to hear about a lot of things. We're going to hear a lot about what's going on now, some of the things out there. Tomorrow we're going to talk about gear that's on the ground. We're going to have our tech show and tell like we had last year that everybody enjoyed so much. Oh, I forgot posters. Today we have posters. Everybody get excited about posters. I know y'all like those. And lightning talks, all the lightning talks, which Anna loves so much. I'll give announcements about that later to make sure that you are lined up properly, because we have some scene changes that are going to be a little fun today and tomorrow. And then our last day is a shorter day, but I do recommend if you have time, you come to that day. That's going to be some deep conversation. really talking about how we drive things forward, how we do things together. And we're going to have a lot of time for networking. If you need to have, or you've met people here that you want to have side meetings with, we're going to give you the room and the space for that. Okay, let's talk about all the boring stuff, but I have to say it. There are exits. You can leave if you need to leave. You can bring coffee, water, any drinks in here, please no food. I'm telling y'all, we had to move everything in the world to get drinks in here, so I hope there's lids now. I got real concerned seeing all that coffee with no lids, because we were gonna have to have our executive Jason clean this place when you leave if we spill it everywhere. Another thing, there is a mother's room upstairs. If you go into the break room area and you need that, it's upstairs. It has a sign on the door. Not all, we have mics in here. No, we don't, they are gone. All Q&A will be done on Slido. So if you have a question, we'll have them up here so you can put that on your phone and ask the questions that you wanna ask. There are charging stations outside in the main dining area if you need to charge anything. I hope everybody got their lunch printout so that you can look and see the options for dining and kind of plan for that. And I think some of them you can do pre-order, so if you don't want to wait in line, you can do that. They will be out front the entire lunchtime, so if you want to wait a couple of minutes and go, however you want to do it. If you are for national, you will have to check in every day. I just want to remind you of that. Please check in with the guard station every day. And I think that's all for me, so I am going to kick it off for a true APL welcome from Jason Callery.
All right, good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Lunar Surface Innovation Consortium. So as Jamie said, my name is Jason Callery. I am the missionary executive for space formulation here at APL. 3,500 members, 1,200 organizations, participation from all 50 US states and 80 countries abroad, 250 plus monthly telecons, 18 workshops, 70 papers and presentations, and the list goes on and on and on. Wow. LSIC community, give yourselves a round of applause. Jamie talked about the kickoff of this 5 years ago. I was here, unlike you. It was, let me say, a little bit smaller. It was a little bit more uncertain. It felt like a bit of a gamble, right? Would there be interest? Would organizations and leaders across the lunar community in the nation and the world show up and contribute their time? Could we actually succeed in shaping the national narrative on how to build a sustained human presence on the moon? Well, through incredible hard work and collaboration and transparency and trust, we've not only been successful in defining a results-oriented approach to deliver infrastructure to the moon, but we've really trailblazed the way that a consortium should operate to maximize efficiency in that goal. LSIC does this. It's a driving force today of the lunar economy by optimizing the transition of terrestrial technologies to lunar surface solutions. And it does that by leveraging government investments and supporting cost sharing of public-private partnerships. The progress over the past 5 years could not be possible without all of you. So first, thank you all. Thank you for everything that you've done and the impact that you've realized. People often ask me, how does the Lunar Surface Innovation Consortium fit in to the broader goals and the broader civil space program that we have here at the Johns Hopkins Applied Physics Lab? After all, we are best known for the work that we do with the Science Mission Directorate as a mission management center and implementing game-changing, bold space science missions. For example, developing a spacecraft that can hibernate for 9 years, travel to the outer solar system, and then turn on and explore the planet Pluto in the outer remote part of our solar system. Or taking on the opposite challenge, building a spacecraft that can literally fly through the outer atmosphere of the sun and touch another star. Or building a mission that doesn't require an extended phase, because we took the spacecraft and we slammed it into a 150-meter asteroid and bumped a natural object in space for the first time in human history. And right now, across the street, we're building a mission called Dragonfly, which is a 1,000-kilogram nuclear-powered dual quadcopter that's going to advance the search for life and travel to the most exotic destination in our solar system, Saturn's moon Titan. So how does LSIC fit into that portfolio? It's the exact same. The strategy for why APL takes on those challenges is because of how difficult they are, because they require the best and brightest in the community to come together and tackle old problems in new ways. And when we achieve success on those initiatives, we change the world. That's what we're doing at LSIC. This is why APL is here. This is why we're your partner. That's our goal. So today, we have a spotlight on the moon, okay? And make no mistake, we are in the midst of a new space race. Okay, the moon today is the most interesting destination and domain for science, for technology, for security, and for synergy across the community. I'll give you an example. I was at the International Astronautical Congress in Milan, Italy, about 6 months ago, and I was touring the exhibit hall and looking at the activities of different international organizations that are getting involved in space exploration, and I found myself walking through one of many exhibits and booths from the Chinese Space Agency. And it was inspirational, okay? They have a roadmap, and they're achieving all of the milestones on their roadmap. They have astronauts in space, they have a space station, they've landed on the moon multiple times, they've deployed rovers on the moon, they've brought back samples from the moon multiple times. And I had a chance to, in fact, hold a plaque that they had, and inside that plaque was a sample from the far side of the moon. It was moving. It touched me emotionally. You know what's next? They want to go to the moon with human beings. And they want to land on the moon and learn to live on the moon. Based on their progress, I don't doubt that they will get there soon. So today, my message for the LSIC community is a real need to double down, right? To have a sense of urgency, right? What we are doing here is nationally important. We've seen what you can do, and we know this is possible if we have the will. But we need to get after it, and we need to get after it quickly. So stakes are high tomorrow, looking forward, right? The stakes are high. This project and its goals are about US leadership in space exploration. Let me give you an example. Right now, no other country in the world could claim that they are the world's leader in astrophysics. You know why? Because 10,000 people in the US spent a decade of blood, sweat, and tears building the James Webb Space Telescope. And nothing can touch it. It epitomizes US leadership in space for space exploration. That's what this is. That's what this community is. That's what you guys are doing. You've already dreamt the impossible, a sustained presence on the moon and beyond, and now it's time to invent that future. We have the people, we have the thought leadership, we have the ideas, we have the technologies, we have the rides to get those technologies to the moon and deploy and test them, and we have the support to do great, one-of-a-kind things that exemplify US leadership in this nation. I can't wait for this meeting to start. Can't wait to hear all of your ideas. Those ideas are going to propel the US to send humanity back to the moon, and this time to stay. Thank you very much. Okay, so we're going to get things started the right way with a scene-setting talk from NASA. And so it's my pleasure to introduce Clayton Turner to give the NASA update as our first speaker. Clayton, everybody knows, is the Associate Administrator of NASA Space Tech. So he is not only responsible for this project, but for Space Tech's impressive portfolio of technologies. He oversees executive leadership, strategic planning, overall management of all technology maturation and demonstration programs in Space Tech. His role is critical to enable the space-focused technologies that Space Tech is renowned for. Before joining headquarters, Clayton served as the director of NASA's Langley Research Center in Virginia. That was from 2019 to 2024. At Langley, he led a large team that made revolutionary improvements to aviation, expanded our understanding of Earth's atmosphere, and developed new technologies for space exploration. Very interesting for the young folks in the audience. So Clayton ascended to the role of director at Langley after a storied career as a systems engineer, a chief engineer, engineering director, associate center director, and deputy center director. So for all of the aspiring young engineers and managers in the audience, Clayton is proof that hard work and persistence pays off. Clayton has now served the agency for an incredible 30+ years in roles that span LiDAR technology experiments, earth science aerosol experiments, materials technology, the shuttle program's return to flight, flight testing of Orion, and even descent and landing systems of the Mars Science Laboratory. It's an incredible resume. Clayton graduated from Rochester Institute of Technology in 1990, and he has received many prestigious awards. The list is long, I cut it. Presidential Rank Award, NASA Distinguished Service Medal, NASA Outstanding Leadership Medal, NASA Exceptional Engineering Achievement Medal, and many, many more. Clayton, welcome to LSIC, and we look forward to your presentation.
All right, I'll start out by saying I almost didn't get up because when you hear your resume and somebody reads it and they do such a great job of telling it and you wonder who is that and what did that person do, right? So I'll start out with that. So I think I'm running the shots here. So we've already covered this, right? This is kind of our near-term objective here. Earth, understand our home, get to the moon, live and work on the moon, humans on Mars. That's our near-term objectives. And as Jason did such a great job of explaining all the things that took to get us to this point where we are right now today. So what I want to talk about, and I hope most of you are familiar with, this is what we do at Space Technology. We advance, we foster, and we inspire. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about those three things, and I'm going to talk through some technologies and some developments. What you should take from this slide is that this is only possible because this community comes together to do this work. That public-private partnership and all the various ways that can happen. I talked to a couple of students outside in front of their poster, and they built a payload to go on the zero-G aircraft. And so I asked them about the challenges of working with NASA and getting through and getting their thing on the device and getting connected with the commercial partner. And of course, they told me everything was wonderful until I pressed them and pressed them. Then they told me about the parts that were a little harder. That's where you also are going to help us. Because it is our hope, it is my desire that we make this as seamless as possible within the rules and the law. So there's some things we can do better as we work together. Because that previous slide, for us to be successful living and working on the lunar surface, for us to be successful with humans on Mars, and I'll save the last piece for my last chart. But as Jason described, we are in a race. The race has different features, and it has significantly more players, and more players are likely to come on the scene. And we are in a position where it's not just the federal government doing this. It's going to be public and private sector. Some of you in the room, as I look around, we've met, we've talked about all the things we're going to do together. Because just as eager as we are to explore, we want to advance and drive that space economy that we all know is there. Now, as I was telling the students outside, that space economy is going to happen. What we can do is set the pace of when that's going to happen, when that's going to take place, right? We think about aviation back in the days when the government and the crazy daredevils messed with the flying machines. Now nobody gives a second thought to hopping on an airplane, right? That developed over time. We get to set the pace for this development. So we're going to advance. We're going to make those innovations, those technology innovations. So what I want to talk about today is some of those technologies that we developed. One of the things we did in the space transportation area is a SEP device. That device has been built, and we're going to go through some significant testing over time. That's a propulsion system that will help us to enable lunar surface operations, space operations. So how many people are familiar with our domain structure in STMD? Just show of hands, right? So what I'd like to hope you can do, and maybe, Jason, we can share some copies of this, our domain structure, when we talk about that first piece, how do we go, right? How do we get from where we are here on home planet to where we're going to go on the lunar surface and beyond? So we're going to do that in a number of ways. Some of the ways we work on here in Space Tech are the SEP operations, but we also work on things, technology development for solar wind. So right now we have a solar sail up in orbit. I think it's at about 600 miles. If you have a lot of time and you want to position yourself, that's the way to go. If you want to get there quicker, solar sail is probably not for you. For those that are interested, I think you can go online and find a link. You can actually see this, just like the station when it goes by. So right now, it's stabilizing, and we're going to demonstrate that I can put instruments on. Now, we can't get those instruments to Pluto, but we can get you pretty far, again, if you've got time and you just want to sit somewhere and look around and explore as we go out. Next thing you'll see on there is it's actually on a pylon on an aircraft. Since February, we've evaluated 4 technologies for navigation precision landing, right? So we use aircraft to experiment with how our systems and sensors operate. Now, when I was at Langley, the team was finishing up the navigational Doppler LiDAR. I have been at Langley long enough to remember when that system was connected to one of those cargo helicopters, you know, the giant legs, and it was in a cargo trailer. And that's what we flew to demonstrate this capability. Now we've gone well beyond that to where this technology actually is applicable to landing on the lunar surface. So again, 4 of those technologies developed since February. Those are things we're going to do together to advance what we're going to do, and I'm going to keep hitting on this, from living and working on the lunar surface to going on humans on Mars. The next technology, and I don't have a laser pointer here. Jason, I'm going to pick on you because I don't have a laser pointer. I'm going to come over here and try to jump and point. But when we did our shortfalls, how many people are familiar with shortfalls? Just quick show of hands, good. We did our shortfalls, we reached out to this community. What is it we need to know how to do if we're going to take this journey that we're going to take together? What we heard pretty much unanimously is survive the night. And one of the key pieces of surviving the night, power. So what are those ways we can generate power? What are those ways we can distribute power? What are those ways we can store power, right? So we can get to that survive the night. And can we do that in environments where the temperatures are not as friendly as we'd like them to be? So those are, again, some of the concepts we're working on. And that's just not, can I move the electrons from place A to place B? Do I have the materials and structures? Do I have the technology so some of these things will assemble themselves, from surface assemblies to in-space assemblies? Yes. Yeah. This, I don't think I've ever seen a laser pointer this big before. I'm going to point it this way because I don't want to take anybody's eye out here. That is impressive. What does it say? Oh, AV sector. May the force be with, oh, really? So if you should hear that the NASA guy stole a laser pointer, it wasn't me, it was somebody else, all right? That is impressive. Yeah, that is truly, I'm pretty much done. I just want to play with this. All right, so the survive the night, it requires power. All those things we're going to learn, the materials we're going to use, the way we're going to share that power around, the way we're going to store that power, that's not only going to be necessary for what we're going to do on the lunar surface, but that's going to help us to learn to survive on Mars. That's going to help us as we go further into the solar system. So we are eager to work with you on those concepts that are going to enable us to collectively survive the night. And you see the picture there is, I have a pointer here, right? The tall solar towers. That's a structures challenge. That's an assembly challenge. And it's going to be in some cases when the humans aren't quite there, because we're going to need to stage and do a lot of things before the humans get there and while the humans are there. Once we get that power on the surface, how reliable is that power, and how much service does it require from those humans? When we do our robotic exploration to support the humans, what do we do to get power further off and around? And we're doing that in an environment where our competitors are doing the exact same thing. And we can go into a lot of reasons why we want to keep that leadership and open up those opportunities. Where are the 2 students that I spoke to? I already told them that their charge is to make this happen faster. They thought they were going to tell me about the wonderful work they were going to do and it's all done, but their charge is to become part of a community like this and make all this happen faster. The next chart, yeah. Here, this is a depiction of what we do in our small satellites. So this is an area where we can take on more risk. So if I was to tell Jason for his mission to Pluto that, I want to see if you can maybe go to Pluto, spin around a few times, come back to Neptune, spin around, and I only have a few dollars, so can you put that in a cardboard box and just let's see what happens, right? He probably would have me escorted off the field. But we, as a community, need an environment where we can take higher risk, where somebody can come up with an idea. Those 2 students that I spoke with can come up with an idea and say, what if? What happens if I did it this way, right? So we can find a ride on something. We can ride, somebody can kick us off their ESPA ring. We can get a launch on something and get it suborbital. We can put it on an airplane and do a 0G kind of thing, right? Those are all opportunities where we can tolerate more risk, we can try it out, and then go do it again, because we're going to learn every time. That's the path to what we're doing here. It's not always going to be, I have this concept and I'm going to jump right to the, and I won't speculate a cost to get to Pluto, but we're going to jump right to what it means to get to Pluto. If we do that higher risk part, that higher risk tolerant part well, then the things we do when we do Pluto, when we do James Webb, they're going to be even more straightforward, more clear. I would also contend that, and I'm going to talk about this a little bit more, as we do these higher risk things, we're not only learning for our primary mission together, but we're also learning here for home planet. And I'll talk a little bit more about that. And the last piece I'll talk about here is our foundational capabilities. So, and I'm hesitating because I tend to refer to some things as roads and commodes, those base core pieces you need to function. Well, we're going to need better computing than we have access to that's tolerant to radiation. We're going to need more robust computing. We have to develop those technologies. We're going to those materials that I talked about, the robotic assemblies. We're going to need things that are going to work autonomously in concert with the humans when we go further. Those are going to be some of our ground developments. Those are going to be some of the partnerships we work on together to push that. You are also, for those in business, you're going to have that drive your business cases. So again, that government, that public-private partnership. All right, so a couple of pictures here. Our access to the lunar surface. So I'm not going to date anybody, but I can certainly remember when the first landing on the moon of humans, and I was watching a television. I think the screen was about that big. Maybe it was a little bigger than my cell phone, and it was in black and white. And that was, you know, that changed the world. And even the launches that came under Apollo, and even the missions that we launched for shuttle and station being on, the idea that there's been somebody up in orbit around Earth longer than those 2 students I talked to have been alive, right? So what's that next step? What's that thing that's going to be? What's going to drive so that going to the lunar surface isn't the challenge? That's just a tool we use to do what we want to do. It gives us that low G gravity to advance and get to other things. It gives us a chance to do the science we want to do. It gives us a chance to have an observatory, say on the dark side, looking into our universe even farther or with better clarity than we have right now. Those are the kind of things we're going to do with our commercial partners, where just like in aviation now, we don't need to build an airplane, although the team at NASA can. We certainly don't need to run an airline, although we could, I imagine. We want to be able to go buy a ticket so we can go do the things we want to do when we get there. And now we're talking about that space economy driving and supporting itself, because going there isn't the thing. It's what can I do? How can I make my product better? How can I impact the lives of human beings walking down the street right now? So you see the Blue Ghost and the IM lander, both flying around. Those are access to the lunar surface, and you'll see more commercial partners coming online. People have probably seen all the videos of in the 20s, or maybe in the teens, of those first wooden aircraft, and they would fly them, and some of them didn't work so well. And what would they do? They would quit and go home and say, I'm never doing this. No, of course not. They would take the pieces, figure out what didn't work, and do it again, and do it again, to where we're comfortable hopping on that airplane. We're comfortable taking our children on that airplane. That's what's going to happen at the lunar surface. That's going to happen when we go to Mars and on deeper into the solar system. All right, so as we foster those innovations, a lot of that is going to come from this community. There can be challenges. Sometimes the bureaucracy gets in your way when we're trying to do something. I would encourage you to talk to us. At some point, it may be, no, we actually can't do that thing. But if we're talking and understanding, we may be able to find a path that works for both of us. because we have a common goal, that exploration for human exploration, robotic exploration, for science, even understanding our home planet. People, I'm assuming, are familiar with our tech transfer program and familiar with all the licenses and patents we put out. Those come from the work we do on our common mission, and they benefit right here on home planet. So we want to make sure we foster those innovations, we provide those what-ifs, those change the world opportunities. So you can imagine a scenario where there's a family, maybe they have a child or a parent or a sister or a brother that has some breathing difficulties. So maybe that sister or brother, some days they really shouldn't be out because the atmosphere really isn't that clean for them, and that's not something you can see. But wouldn't it be great if they could get a forecast for the air quality just like you can get a forecast for the rain? Well, that's already exists because somebody said, what if you could do that, right? So that satellite's up in orbit right now, and that one's a bit unique because it is actually riding on a communications satellite. I can't tell you which one, not because it's a secret, because I don't know, but the same one that's sending you your HBO and your whatever, has got this Earth Science satellite on it. Now, the only thing we had to do was ensure them we would not damage their, interfere with their satellite. So that's another model for how we get things to understand the Earth itself. As we go on to the lunar surface, you can imagine the same kind of thing where, again, going there is not the challenge. Working there is not the challenge. It's what we can do from there to improve and make our products special. All right, so when we talk about fostering, familiar with our ACOs and tipping points? Yes? Hands? Ooh, okay, good. Hopefully that's a lot. SBIR, our small business phase 1, phase 2, and we're continuing to find ways where we can bridge, because I understand that sometimes between one phase and the other, that gap can be a challenge, especially if you're a new and burgeoning business. We're working to try to make that as seamless as we possibly can. But we will continue to do that. I talked about flight opportunities, and I talked a little bit about small spacecraft. The 3 satellites, the Starlink, not to be confused with Starlink, that are up in orbit right now demonstrating their autonomous flying in low Earth orbit. Those are the kind of things we can do in these environments. When you have that idea and that thought, and if you haven't looked at all the various ways we do a lot of competitive processes, but the competition is to find the best and brightest ideas that will tie with our mission, but also aligns with your mission. So we encourage you to join us for those. All right, the Inspire piece. So this is the one that's nearest and dearest to me. Not only, as Jason shared a number of times, this is how we're going to energize the nation, lead the nation, provide what's needed for the nation. But this is also how we're going to energize the next set of researchers, scientists, engineers, accountants, lawyers. All of those things are required to do this audacious plan we have before us. Our ability to inspire, our ability to put students in undergrad on a zero-G aircraft and have them fly and experience that, and then what they're going to do and develop. Our ability to go into a nursery school and talk to people about these concepts. And some of you are probably saying, what are you talking about going to a nursery school? I can tell you that I literally, on my first day as Center Director of NASA Langley Research Center, I spent at a nursery school. I talked to 4-year-olds about the solar system. I was the sun, they were the planets, we spun, we laughed, they fell. I didn't fall because that wouldn't be good. But we went on. Yeah, you can laugh, it's okay. You can laugh, but when we got done, they could tell me the closest planet to the sun, the farthest planet, the largest planet, the warmest planet. Not because I asked them to memorize it, but because we experienced it, right? Then I talked to 3-year-olds about gravity, aerothermodynamics, and coding. 3-year-olds. I held a balloon and I dropped it, I held a ball and I dropped it, and I asked, why did it fall? And the 3-year-old told me, talking about gravity, because it's not a balloon, and then she told me why the balloon went up, right? A 3-year-old. So I get excited thinking about what is that 3-year-old going to do if we keep pouring I cans into her head? What amazing things is she going to do for all of us? So when we talk about that 3-year-old, we also we're going to inspire that group so we find those opportunities before us. All right, so a couple of inspirational examples. We all went through the unpleasant experience of COVID. This first, I'm going to fit my laser pointer. This was a team of folks that put together some concepts for some ventilators to help people during the time of COVID because those were in very short supply. Now, those folks were coming from a lot of different areas, but we were able to apply our collective expertise to solve not only a challenge for the nation, but a challenge for the world. When we talk about visiting places like Europa and other planetary bodies and exploring that, continuing that search for life, developing these, and this is about 16 inches long. Hopefully I have that right, about 16 inches long. It looks huge in the pool. But developing, being willing to invest in and to develop those concepts, and that happens because we can do things like this. I've only been with the team a little less than a year, but I can tell you the impact that you've made in your 5 years is pretty significant. And that impact is not just the technology, widgets, and gadgets, but it's all of you sharing the value you have for what we're trying to do collectively together. So I really do encourage you to engage with us so we can go even farther than we've gone so far. All right, so I'm gonna let everybody sink in. This is my last chart. I want you to look at this picture. Think about that for a minute. And I want you to look at the vehicle right here, and you notice what's on the side of that vehicle. Anybody? It's a quiz. School bus, yeah, school bus. Little kid going to school. First day of school on Mars, all right? First day of school on Mars. I get chills thinking about it because when that is our reality, think about where we are, what challenges we have solved here on home planet when we are comfortable with our children going to school on Mars. And again, it isn't about that we can go to Mars, it's about what we can do when we're there. What have we done? What have we solved? So I usually hand out posters of this poster. So sadly, as I always do, I forgot them, but come by the office. I'll give you a poster. What I want you to take from this is there's an opportunity for us to do some amazing things in our world. It's an opportunity for us to change the lives of our fellow citizens in a positive way. It's an opportunity for us to make this everybody's reality. I look forward to doing this with you all. So let's go to work. Thank you. So I think questions, is that, you have online questions? I got to tell you, you need to come and work this. It's even like a lightsaber size, right? That's pretty. John, I'm going to let you see this since you're coming up for me. This is pretty impressive. Yeah.
That's beautiful. Thank you.
Yeah, I think between the two of us, it may not survive the day.
Questions for you.
Okay.
All right, the first one, it's got the most upvotes is, how does the skinny budget affect the plans and goals we're talking about here?
Yeah, so this is what I'm going to say. So I'm going to back up a little bit. Every year, we go through a budget cycle where the process, we put in what we think we can do, and it goes through the administration every year, whatever administration. The administration puts out their objectives for what we're going to do, and then Congress weighs in, and then they pass the bill. That can be any number going forward, right? Can go up, can go down. It could go up, but it may very well go down, right? That happens every year. I feel it's part of my job to navigate that. So if it goes down a lot, then we have to, as a community, what are those priorities that are going to help us meet these objectives? What are the priorities that we're going to focus on? And we heard from this community, survive the night. We heard from the administration, the moon to Mars. We heard the idea of making air travel, making the planes lighter, making them more efficient, right? as they drive that economic engine. So those will be the priorities. So the things we do are subject to change. We will set priorities. We will set direction to get to that long-term goal. So that may not be a nice, clean answer for you, but we are going to navigate that, and we'll do that together.
All right. Another question. Could you provide an update on the status and progress of the Lift 1 mission? Specifically, what developments have occurred since NASA's request for information in late 2023? Are there any significant challenges or changes to the mission's objectives or timeline that you can share? That's like 3 questions, so I apologize in advance.
Yeah, so I'm going to let Nikki go into some, and Nikki here is the program director for that area, our live domain. We use short titles for the titles you saw on there. But in general, it's the same thing I just told you. We're going to do some parts of it because ISRU is a part of what we're doing, but Lift is more than ISRU. What are those base pieces we need? So what are the things we need right now to operate and function? So wherever you are, questioner, Nikki's going to go into some more detail in about an hour on that.
All right, we have a couple more. Given the current funding climate, is Tipping Point still going to have a future RFPs?
Yeah, so I would say tipping points, ACOs, and a lot of the other opportunities to partner are in the DNA of STMD. We are going to do them given budget to execute them. Now, if the budget is so constrained, it may be a longer gap from one to the other, but it is in our DNA. We want this collaboration. So it doesn't go on the back burner. It's just we're going to go with as many as we can given the budget that we have. And you'll see things like the SBIRs are out there, and you'll see we're still doing prizes and challenges, and we're still doing the student engagements, but it's the level and number of those that will ride with any budget cycle that we go through. And during any presidential transition, there's always the delay because it's the transition of office and the skinny budget and the actual budget. Then we get into a cadence with the president until there's another transition. But that has been the case for some time.
All right, what are the plans for using the shortfalls Space Tech introduced last year?
Right, so we've already incorporated the shortfalls. You heard me talk a couple of times about Survive the Night. The shortfalls allowed us to reach out and get your input, but we also got your input on our process. So you'll see the list of shortfalls we have. Some of them are those big challenges, but some of them are actually a technological widget or challenge. So we're going to try to do better at answering the questions. We're going to try to do better at being clear so you can be clear with us. What you're going to see is the cadence of that. It won't be every year, but we're trying to find what's the right cadence because we want to continually engage, but we also don't want to drive you nuts with a survey every other week kind of thing. But we absolutely are going to use those the shortfalls and that shortfall process, but improving it along the way. And improvement doesn't just mean we're going to get in a room and try to figure it out. We've reached out to some of our advisory committees to get their opinion for how we implemented shortfalls, and is that the best way to get the input from this community?
All right, we have time for a couple more. What programs are at the top priority for continuing to get government funding in the near future?
What programs are a top priority? So certainly in STMD, it's and I'll say the infrastructure, the roads and commodes for the lunar surface. The communications, guidance, navigation, and control to be able to do that on the lunar surface and project that to Mars. How do we do that? The propulsion systems that I talked about. How do we move around and get either payloads or humans from where they are to where we want them to be? How do we land when we get them there? Those are some of the things that are still in our portfolio.
Oh. So how can Space Tech better split the bill with those who will benefit from their tech, other mission directorates, other agencies, etc.? And how do we make sure it's not too many cooks in the kitchen?
So I may miss, if the question is in here, I may miss, you're asking how do we split the bill more but without cooks in the kitchen, or? split the bill less if the person maybe.
I think the focus is on that first question, is how can Space Tech better split the bill with those who will benefit from their tech?
So we actively go out and look for partners to contribute. And I will say, even when I was a center director, I would look for partners, not just let's write a contract, but who can we partner with because we have common objectives. We will continue to do that. The cooks in the kitchen become a problem if we don't agree going in, this is the objective we're going for, right? Because if we haven't taken the time to align our objectives, then we can go in many different directions, and none of which will get us to the end goal. So, and if I haven't, I'm going to be around for a little while this morning, so if I haven't answered your question, please follow up with me.
All right, yeah, I think we'll stop it there. Thank you.
All right, thank you, everyone.
All right, well, Clayton, that was excellent. Thank you for setting the scene, getting us started, and I think that sets us up for the rest of the conference very, very nicely. So now it's my pleasure to welcome our keynote speaker of the day, John Koulouris. John is the Senior Vice President of Blue Origin's Lunar Preeminence Business Unit. Blue Origin, for those that may not know, refers to our planet. It refers to Earth. And the company's vision is a future where millions of people are living and working in space. The reason is to restore and sustain Earth and our precious resources. In other words, to protect our planet, we need to learn to live in space and on other worlds. That's the exact thrust of the Lunar Surface Innovation Consortium. John has been with the company since early 2020. He started as a program manager of Blue Origin's successful human landing system, national team proposal and effort. Before that, he was the co-founder and CTO, Chief Technology Officer at Reliable Robotics, a company focused on automated aviation systems that will enable air transportation to become safer, more convenient, and transform the way goods and people move around the planet. John's career in commercial space actually started at SpaceX, where he was a senior director of launch and mission operations. Here, he made history. John was the lead mission director for the Dragon C2 Plus mission to the International Space Station. That mission restored America's access to the International Space Station after the retirement of the space shuttle. After departing SpaceX, he joined Virgin Orbit as head of launch systems, and before that, he spent 10 years in the commercial airline industry in significant other roles. And prior to that, John served in the US Navy for roughly 10 years as a naval aviator, a mission commander, and an instructor pilot on multiple aircraft, and was also selected to be a US Navy test pilot. John has received many awards, multiple awards, including 2 air medals from the president for flying over 50 combat stories in Bosnia and Kosovo. He received his Bachelor's of Science degree in Mechanical Engineering and his Master's degree in Aerospace Engineering, both from Rensselaer Polytechnic Institute. Before I welcome John to the stage, I want to share a personal story about the inspiration that Blue Origin can provide for the next generation. A couple years ago, myself, my family, my wife, my 4 kids, we all went to the Kennedy Space Center to see a launch, a big rocket launch. And the launch was perfect. It was a picture-perfect day. The bleachers at Banana Creek were slammed. The rocket took off. Chests are thumping. My son's jaw has dropped, wondering what the heck is going on. And it was just excellent. For the rest of the day, they could not stop talking about the launch. The next day, we had a tour of the Blue Origin facility at the Kennedy Space Center. Oh my word, okay? The kids spent almost 2 hours being blown away by every part of the facility, from the Mission Operations Center to the 100,000-foot, 100-foot high clean, high bay clean room, full of hardware, to the snacks in the lounge and the quality of the snacks in the lounge, to Hootie. Hootie is the tour guide at the facility. Blue car, Hootie on the license plate, amazing engagement with the kids. As we left the facility, we got back in the car, all 4 kids felt the Blue Origin tour was cooler than the mission launch. John, welcome to LSIC. We look forward to your talk.
Hi, everyone. I'm John Cloris, the Senior Director and Senior Vice President of Lunar Permanence at Blue Origin. First of all, we're so fortunate to be in this time in history. You think about how lucky my group and I are to be called Lunar Permanence. Jeff and the entire leadership team worked hard with us to think of two words that to the average person coalesces and crystallizes what we're all trying to do. And I'm flattered to be here with all of you today because together we're going to open up this 8th continent, which is the moon. We're all going to explore together. We're going to drive down the costs of access to the moon so that all of you can do more exploration and open up this new world of ours. So when we talk about building the road to space and millions of people living and working in space, it sounds very grand, but it all starts with one person. It started with Yuri Gagarin and Alan Shepard. It moved on to opening low Earth orbit, to Neil and Buzz going to the moon. And now we're continuing that, where now we went to 6 people on the ISS, now 13. Pretty soon we'll be in the tens, then hundreds, then thousands. So why not millions of people living and working in space? I love the airline examples that we discuss. The 1920s are very much like what we're experiencing right now in the 2020s. In 1927, Pan Am flew its first route from Key West to Havana, Cuba. It carried a few passengers and airmail, a public-private partnership. That route, that airline, opened up the world, where now the average American flies 4.5 times a year. It's a multi-billion-dollar industry. Millions of people are now traveling. That's what the 2020s will offer for all of us. We'll open up the next century of space exploration. So building that road to space is exactly what I was referring to. We all work together to build this where we go to the moon and then we go beyond. And inspiring and mobilizing. I kind of joke that the moon can't just be for us engineers. If so, it might be a boring place. Forgive me, all right? But we want to inspire everyone. And I just thought of it, giving a quick story here. The Artemis 1 launch. I live in Florida. I work out of our Cape facility. I tend to work late, and I decided for Artemis 1, I was just going to work through till 2:30, 3 o'clock in the morning, leave my office and go watch the launch. And while I'm working, I see my kid get up at 2 o'clock in the morning with his iPad. I'm like, his mom is going to kill him, and me. He's on a group chat. All his friends set their alarms to sneak out of their house and watch the launch from their front yards. That's inspiration. That's stuff that we don't even know we're imparting to people and to kids and to that next generation. I also double locked my doors from now on so he can't sneak out. As a 9-year-old, that's a bad trend to start. But it's really cool what we are all doing today. And what we have to do is keep that pace of exploration moving. So why the moon? A lot of you know this, but the moon is 3 days away. It takes a 24th of the energy to get a kilogram of mass from the moon to the rest of the solar system as it does from low Earth orbit. Or excuse me, from the surface of the Earth. We will start with exploring from the surface of the Earth, but we want to open up the moon where the moon becomes our eventual hub for the rest of the solar system, where we can derive resources to build those vehicles, where we can fuel those vehicles from resources, so that the mass that we bring from the surface of the Earth is focused towards science, towards people, towards critical cargo, and not necessarily flying tanks to then go on and explore the rest of the solar system. We don't even know what else the moon has to offer. We're still making discoveries here on Earth. So we have to explore. We have to access all locations of the Earth, of the moon, as well as the Earth. We're still making discoveries every day here, and we should continue that kind of innovation, that kind of thinking. Also, the moon, as you know, the resources it offers, whether it be silicon, aluminum, oxygen, the regolith, water for survival, water to derive propellants from, many other resources. That's what we're working on at Blue Origin right now. You may be familiar with our Blue Alchemist effort, and you'll hear more of that in a panel session later. How do we make solar arrays on the surface of the moon so we can power and build our power grid, build the infrastructure to support the next generation? How do we extract metals and other resources? That's what we're working on now. That's what a lot of you all are working on. And we want to all work together on this. How do we extract water? Tipping points, great example, a couple of things. We have an H2 liquefaction, so hydrogen liquefaction tipping point that we worked with NASA on. So one group in blue is working ISRU. How do we extract these valuable resources? But we also have to start thinking, how do we store them? How do we store them for the long term? How do we get to zero boil off? That's what that effort not only worked for the future of the moon, but then populated back to how do we make hydrogen and oxygen storable propellants. And I'll talk about that in a little bit. Another tipping point, the Mark I lander, which I'll talk to in a second, we estimate we'll be able to have the capability to land within 10 meters of its designated landing location. We use LiDAR TRN, and we use other sensors that we first proved we could use on our new Shepherd vehicle in West Texas. That was part of a tipping point. We were able to get flight time on these vehicles, as well as fly other pilots, such as a JPL flight computer, to prove that we can do these amazing things on our first mission. So our family of vehicles, speaking of inspiration, the Apollo LEM, some of you may have seen, like my dad worked on that at Grumman. And he never pushed it on my brother or I, or myself, but it inspired us to now do the next thing. In fact, my brother and I worked at SpaceX and now work at Blue Origin together. He works on the launch vehicle, I work on the lander side. So I kind of joke, if we ever have a conflict, I'm not going to Jeff, I'm going to Mom to adjudicate this. But that's the road that we're all building together. So the Grumman LEM, this is our Blue Moon Mark I lander in the middle. This will land this year on the south pole of the moon. Hydrogen, oxygen, I'll talk about it more later. And then our Mark II lander, which we're so fortunate to be working with NASA on for HLS. Think of that airline example again and what the country has done. If you take the two Blue Origin vehicles, think all the way to the left, those are Eclipse landers. Up to 500, perhaps 1,000 kilograms to the moon. Mark I is capable of landing up to 3 metric tons on the moon, day or night, any location. That was our requirement from the start. Mark II can land up to 20 metric tons in a reusable configuration, or up to 30 metric tons in a one-way configuration, if you want to put an in-place habitation module or something like that. And then Starship is in excess of 100 metric tons, is the last I saw publicly. Now think of that airline example. You're building your airline, the country is building your airline from a commuter aircraft all the way to your 747, to your wide body. You have your 737s, your 777s in the interim. That's what we're building together so that you can have that rapid, as you make discoveries, you can have that rapid access to anywhere on the moon with Eclipse lander or a Mark I lander. Then when you want to start building infrastructure, you start bringing your heavy class landers. That's what we're all doing together. And that's what I'd like you all to be thinking about as you not only think about what you're doing today, but what is for the future and what capabilities will the country and the whole world offer to all of us. So this is our Mark I lander. We're very proud of this vehicle. The vehicle's genesis was when we weren't awarded Appendix H back in 2021. We kind of got the team together. We dust ourselves off. In fact, we played that Chumbawamba song, I get knocked down, but I get up again. But, you know, kind of get people, okay, let's figure this out. Let's go through. And one of the things, or a couple of things we came away with is how do we prove to NASA and to the rest of the world that we can build hardware, that we can move faster? Blue Origin did have this reputation of moving slower, being steady, and making sure we can get things right. We start off as a research and development organization. we're now transitioning into a production organization. So this vehicle, when we talked about this, we were building a structural test article for Appendix H, the original HLS competition. And we were talking at the loss that, worst comes to worst, if New Glenn needed a mass simulator for its first mission, we could launch that structural test article. And with a little more upgrades, we could include our vertically integrated avionics package, so we could prove our avionics in low Earth orbit. And with a little bit more, we could put perhaps our solar power system on, our fuel cells. And maybe a little more, we can even put our reaction control system and BE7 and fire that off in low Earth orbit and get space time on the vehicle. And Jeff said, wow, that's great. Can you land it on the moon? Which was a much bigger step for us, right? But by pushing us and keeping us going, this vehicle was turned on about 3.5 years ago. And we're looking to land this year. Like, that's that transition we're talking about. It's a liquid oxygen, liquid hydrogen vehicle, because those resources can be derived from resources we expect to find on the moon. It also uses an integrated reaction control system, fuel cell, and main propulsion system. So what does that mean? That means our BE7 engine and our reaction control system and our power system to survive the night all utilize the same oxygen and hydrogen system on the vehicle. As I said, it has day-night capability to land anywhere on the moon, up to 3 metric tons in an offloading configuration. We're currently building 2 of these vehicles. We're building intentionally now to get hardware rich. So we have our flight test objectives that were this mission to not be successful, we'll learn from it. We'll learn from the objectives we succeeded in and the ones that we didn't. Incorporate those into the next vehicle. And that next vehicle, we're building on roughly 6 to 8 month cycles on the calendar, assuming no lessons learned that we have to go back to. But that's the target that we're looking to get that production line moving. So again, we can support regular access to the moon, reliable access to the moon in a low-cost manner. And we're very proud of this vehicle. We've got a great team across the country working it. Forgive me while I look at this. One thing I want to reiterate also, this is a single launch vehicle. So it launches fully fueled in the fairing of New Glenn. Oops. So that brings us to the Mark II lander. So Mark I uses a single BE7, our first generation avionics, our fuel cell systems in serial number 2, and a lot of the systems that then will feed forward to the Artemis missions that we're looking to support with NASA. The Mark II lander is capable of landing up to 4 astronauts in either equatorial or polar missions, depending on the NASA requirement. It's capable of docking with both Gateway and with Orion. It loiters in lunar orbit in NRHO, awaiting the crew to arrive. And it's been a fantastic effort by everyone. In fact, in the coming months, we'll be providing an update. We've made a lot of progress on not only the design of this vehicle, but the hardware build. And you'll be seeing some of the upgrades that we've made to the vehicle as we all work together with NASA. This vehicle, we were fortunate enough to be awarded the Appendix P HLS contract, Sustainable Lunar Development contract with NASA. And we've been working very closely with the entire agency. In fact, a lot of the engineering and program management work is in collaboration with NASA. We work with up to 80 full-time equivalent heads at NASA. And it's very important to us to work together and to be open, because those NASA collaboration experts that we work with become our advocates within the agency. And we become NASA's advocates within Blue Origin. So this is why our customer is asking these questions. And our customer can say, this is why Blue Origin is doing things the way they are. It's been very special, very important. We've been very lucky to be working with Lisa Watson-Morgan and her team. Now this is a new image. We haven't released it yet. I expect later today it probably will be from phones, but this is our transporter. This vehicle has evolved significantly since we first won Appendix P. What the transporter does is we launch it on a single New Glenn launch to low Earth orbit, and we refuel it using excess propellant from our second stages of New Glenn. So we refuel it in low Earth orbit, and then it continues to NRHO, to a lunar orbit, where it refuels our lander and then waits for the crew to launch on SLS Orion. Some important points of this lander and how it's evolved and how we're moving towards hardware-rich and speed. This lander, if you see, the diameter has gone up rather significantly since you saw it maybe in the original award statement, which was 2 years from yesterday. We were awarded HLS. It's a 7-meter diameter tank, same diameter tank that our New Glenn vehicle uses. So now instead of doing bespoke tanks for individual vehicles, it's using the same assembly line. In fact, it's very similar in length even to the New Glenn second stage, what we refer to as GS2. This also has our zero boil-off system on it. So this vehicle will be sitting in lunar orbit, maintaining hydrogen and oxygen as storable propellants. Now, you always hear, wow, that's hard to do, and it is hard to do. We've currently have proven, and we are holding 20K and 90K in our facility in Washington State. And again, working in partnership with NASA, we've just integrated our first prototype, and it was put in the thermal vac chamber 2 weeks ago. And by June, we will be showing that we are consistently holding hydrogen and oxygen as storable propellants. It'll be the first time on this scale that we've done this. And by December, we'll start our flight units coming out, December of this year. Once you make hydrogen, think about this, cryogenic fuels. Cryogenic propellants, allowing them to launch and then just boil off without any thermal management system is just a waste of capability coming from the surface of the Earth. Things that we could be using that mass for are instead being used for propellant that may not even be used in the mission. So this zero boil-off system will be on the transporter. The transporter is capable of bringing roughly 100 metric tons from Earth orbit to lunar orbit. That can be a split. It can be either all propellant. It can be the propellant we require for a cargo mission, plus that 20 to 30 metric ton payload, or it could be devoted to all payload. But if you think about 100 metric tons to lunar orbit, that also means this vehicle, with minimal changes, basically on comms, can bring up to 30 metric tons to a Martian orbit, can open up the asteroid belt. This opens up the solar system. This vehicle, storing liquid hydrogen, can even open up derivative vehicles that can support NTP, other propulsion efforts for the future, for the coming decades. This will open up the solar system. And having the moon as our kind of JFK airport, if you will, as that hub, is what excites all of us in Blue Origin. We have reliable, repeatable, low-cost operations, starting with New Glenn, continuing with lunar, and then going to Mars and beyond. So our BE-7 engine, another common aspect across all our vehicles, our BE-7 liquid oxygen, liquid hydrogen engine powers our Mark I lander, our Mark II lander, and the transporter. So same assembly line feeding those vehicles. These images, right now BE-7 is on 4 different test stands, 2 at Marshall Space Flight Center, 1 at our facility in West Texas, and 1 at AFRL, the vacuum chamber at AFRL. That's in the bottom right image here. We've been firing that engine off numerous times at that center to characterize our performance in a vacuum. We've been refining both our thrust chamber assembly dynamics as well as our turbopump operations. The build of this engine that's going to power our first Mark I is almost complete and will be integrated into the vehicle probably late summer. That vehicle will ship in the summertime to JSC, to Houston, to go in Chamber A of the thermal vac chamber. So again, trying to retire risk as much as possible. Once that's done, it'll come to the Cape, get integrated, get encapsulated, and then launch on New Glenn. So those are that's just an introduction very quickly to Blue Origin and to our aspirations in lunar permanence. We're excited to work with everyone, and we're also excited to modify our vehicles to support whatever science, commercial operations that might be out there. A quick example is our Mark II cargo lander to fly the surface hab. We've modified that lander to get proximity to the surface even closer for our European partners, so that when we deploy that habitation module, it's a much faster and more straightforward deployment. And that's what working together early means. So it's not like, here's your vehicle, here's your payload user guide, go adapt to that. It's how do we work together? So thank you very much for having me here. I'm very excited to talk to all of you as we continue on over these next 3 days. And please, if you have any questions. Thank you.
So there are some questions. Can y'all hear me? Okay, there are some questions. The first one is, with Blue Origin aiming for the moon landing in the next 12 to 16 months, how is Blue working with LSIC partners to address challenges like ISRU and surface power?
That's great, yeah. So I joke about the 12 to 16 months. There was an interview. I almost said to the vehicle manager, I'm saying that to you, to make sure you know it's 12 to 16 months. And he's delivered phenomenally. The vehicle is, as I said, is getting ready to ship out of our factory here in about 6 weeks. And we should be launching a few months after that. We are already carrying payloads on that first serial number. That first serial number was originally just meant to prove that Blue Origin can have an in-space operating system and land on the moon. And not only land on the moon, land at the south pole of the moon. And land, what turns out to be the largest vehicle to ever land on the moon. We were able to work with NASA, for example, with the CLPS office, and we're providing an opportunity to fly the SCALPS payload. So we'll be able to do plume surface interaction of our BE-7 engine, which is a large class engine, proximity to the moon at the South Pole. That data will not only feed our designs for future Mark 1s and for Mark 2s, but also other providers, other vehicles that are looking to land at the moon. It will allow us to anchor our models. We're flying a few payloads actually on this first serial number because we've been fortunate enough. New Glenn's performance has been outstanding. We've been able to increase the payload performance that we can offer on this first serial number, which originally I was holding just for propellant margin. And also its orbital insertion accuracy was so good that for our refueling missions, we were able to bring down some margin because now we could anchor our models. So that's how we're working together. And again, events like today, that's where we learn how we can work together more. So please don't hesitate to come out to myself. Got Brett here, Jackie over there, but anyone, please. And during the panel sessions, you'll hear a lot more from Blue.
All right. How does Blue manage the need to cooperate versus compete? Any words of advice for how smaller companies can stay relevant?
That's a good question. So it's the question of competition versus cooperation between all companies, not only of the United States, but in the world. One of the main things we're looking to do, as I said, is provide reliable, repeatable, low-cost access to the moon. And so that will enable that cooperation, where more people can focus on the payloads, on what they want to fly. Like Clayton said earlier, NASA no longer builds, well, you can, but you don't build the aircraft, you don't operate the airline. But originally we did have to think of that public-private partnership before those industries could truly become private. That's what we want to enable. We want to enable people to think of what is the ultimate mission and not worry about how do they get their payload to the moon. It's something that these vehicles will all continue to morph and adapt and upgrade as we continue on. And a lot of that will be learning together what we need to offer our customer.
What is Blue's picture of the infrastructure elements that need to be proved out first?
So infrastructure elements that need to be proved out first. That's another good question. One thing I should have mentioned is Mark 1 being able to land anywhere on the moon and have day-night capability, it can become a node for other infrastructure needs. So if you have a power tower, if you have a power need, a communications relay, so now your payloads don't have to carry the mass needed for long-range communications. They can utilize Mark 1. Other services, that's some of the first infrastructure we can offer. Logistics services using Mark 1 and Mark 2. So Mark 2 cargo provides the habitation module. Mark 2 crew sends the crew. Mark 1 provides logistics, just like what COTS did with Dragon and Cygnus, and then CRS, and then commercial crew, following that same model. How NASA opened up low Earth orbit. Again, first as a government effort, then public-private, now private with Inspiration missions, private with New Shepard. That will be where we go for with the moon next. So infrastructure specific to the surface of the moon, there will always be power and communications requirements. Bandwidth will never, you will never say, I have too much bandwidth. You will never say, I have too much power. But there's also thermal management that comes with all of this. That's some of the infrastructure that we want to work towards, and we want to try to derive it from resources on the moon so we don't have to haul it all the way from the surface of the Earth, and provide those services so that others can focus on what they're trying to do. Again, we talk about millions of people living and working in space. I use this anecdote sometimes. Lewis and Clark didn't explore all the way to the west coast of the United States and say, this would be a great place for Silicon Valley. They had no idea what's coming up, but we knew that opening up the rest of the country made us all better. And that's what we're looking to do on the moon. So there may be other resources and other efforts that we haven't even thought of yet. Water derivation and storage, oxygen generation from regolith. So now we're not just constrained to the poles, but we can derive at least breathable oxygen and half the propellant ratio that we need by storing oxygen. Those are kind of infrastructure things that I think initially it will be kind of Mark 1 based if it's a Blue Origin effort to provide remote infrastructure, say to the far side of the moon, to allow us to quickly work on new discoveries that we didn't expect. We didn't expect to make this discovery in this location of the moon. We can put a Mark 1 there quickly. We can put a CLIPS lander there quickly.
A couple more in here.
Sure.
What technologies is Blue monitoring in the private commercial sector to be able to further advance the company's vision?
That's another great question. So one thing we're very cognizant at Blue, and we try very hard not to fall into the trap of not invented here. The best ideas should win. Again, in a reliable, repeatable, low-cost, competition-sensitive world, we should allow the best product to win. We're very excited about our zero boil-off efforts. That's the in-space infrastructure that's going to be #1 for Blue Origin, making hydrogen, oxygen storable propellants. But then when you think about opening the society on the moon, low-cost avionics, simple things like that, infrastructure on the moon where it will allow precision landing, where you don't need to carry your infrastructure with you. You don't need to carry those sensors with you. So I'm not looking to build a lunar constellation for high-rate comms or for other support services. If someone's out there doing that, I'll buy that service from them. I didn't build our internet infrastructure at the Cape. We utilize those services. Same with ISRU. There's so much to be derived from the moon. At the end of the day, just like an airline, I'm looking to get my propellant as cheaply as possible. If someone can do it at a lower cost point than I can, then I'll buy it from them. I absolutely will, because I'm looking to land multiple vehicles on the moon every year.
All right, we'll take one or two more. I see there's a lot in here about the MK. The reason I'm not doing those is we will have somebody talking about that, I think, tomorrow or the next day. There's a lot in here, but we'll make sure John can get to those.
I had to look to Jackie to confirm.
Yeah.
So.
All right. Does Blue think that providing logistics support to the moon represents a sufficient economical, sustainable business case?
I absolutely do. At some point, it absolutely will. And again, if you use the airline example and you use COTS and CRS as an example, we're fortunate that we have this pathfinding that has already occurred. Airlines got deregulated in 1979 by the Carter administration to turn them into a more competitive and profitable effort. And access to air travel increased 100-fold because of that. People did not think in 1979 that you could do some of the things we do today, that you could commute overseas and be back the next day, or that you'd even want to. Same with COTS and CRS, providing cargo services and eventually crew services to the International Space Station, as far as I know, is a very profitable business. And as we open the moon, as we bring down the cost and the availability of access to the moon, that will enable more customers, which will require more logistics services, which will allow us to sell more of those transportation services. So it is a feedback loop that we are looking to establish. It will take a few years, but we're wholeheartedly in this. You use Amazon as an example. Amazon built its logistics services to complement the rest of its business. And now, in some cases, you can get a package in hours. I'm not promising hours to the moon, but still, we should be looking at these models from history to feed forward.
No, I heard an hour. I'm quoting you. All right, we'll do one more, and that is, what is Blue's philosophy with respect to tech development for the lunar surface? How do you balance innovation and agility with risk?
Yeah, that's another good question. So a couple of things, and you'll hear more of this at the panel sessions of what we're doing for surface innovation. But as I said, Blue Origin originally was a research and development organization moving towards production and regular flight cadence. That's some of the things that we look to get hardware rich, to learn quickly, to accept when we don't succeed and dust ourselves off and try again. And that's what we've got to do at Blue Origin. We're hoping to have multiple launches of New Glenn this year, including our Mark I lander, and recoveries of New Glenn. As you all know, we didn't recover the first New Glenn, but we learned so much from that we were able to incorporate those lessons into the next vehicle. That's the kind of thing we need to keep moving, is moving quickly, accepting from an engineering, a technical, and an intellectual point of view that this is why it didn't work. Not who's to blame, but this is why it didn't work. How do we fix it? And how do we open up the rest of the solar system?
All right, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Hey, everybody. Really good to see you all. I'm Wes Furman. I'm the lead here at APL for our support of NASA Space Tech's LSII. I want to start again just by taking the opportunity to say thank you to all of you folks who have put in hard work. I'm incredibly impressed that over the last 5 years, you've actually changed the moon. Some of the technologies you've developed, they didn't exist 5 years ago when LSIC started, or when my kids were born. And actually, if you entertain me, I've got just a second for a kid's story. I mean, I heard a couple of them already, but kids and launches is like the theme of the day. I don't know, maybe when you've been together for 5 years, you start thinking about kids. That's what had happened for my wife and I. So we had the chance to take my kids to the IM-2 launch back in February. And we're going to hear about that, some of the tech that was on there and more for sure as well. One thing that happened, it was about an hour after sunset, so the lights come down on Banana Creek, when you're on the bleachers. And the launch was counting down, and my kid taps me on the shoulder, and he says, "Who was the first person to call it the moon?" And if you know me, my goldfish brain started wondering, who was the first person who ever put a name to the moon? But, I forgot about it immediately because when the launch goes off, everything goes away. And it's just thunderous exhaust lighting up the sky, and it's an incredible experience for them. And I'd actually completely forgotten about this until about 2 weeks ago when one of my neighbors down the street told me that her daughter's second word was moon, which was incredible to me. the moon, it reminds me, like, the moon has been a part of our lives for generations, from before we even had a name for it. And now, because of your work, we're able to see things going off to the moon now. We're going to get to see some of that tech that's on deck tomorrow at our showcase. And where I get a little bit nerdy is thinking about the infrastructure again, right? That is fundamentally the backbone of exploration, and it can change the scope of human experience for generations. And so thank you for opening up that opportunity for our kids, for my kids, your kids, everybody's futures. You, when you feel like a kid, which happens at every launch. In that spirit, I'm very honored to introduce a visionary leader who's really driving that future. We get excited about things like infrastructure and acquisitions and all of that. Nikki Werkheiser is the Director of Technology Maturation for Space Tech. She's at the front lines of bringing innovation from idea to tangible progress into the moon and beyond. She's got her master's from University of Alabama, Huntsville in gravitational biology. She says no, she doesn't want to hear about bachelor's and all that stuff. All that's good. Really, okay. She is a champion for innovation and collaboration for the tech of our nation. Come on up, Nikki. Thank you very much.
I'm just ready to get to work and talk about what's next. How about that, instead of what's already happened? Okay, good morning. Is it still morning? I'm not holding y'all from lunch this time, I don't think. Am I the last one? Yeah, I always end up getting the crowd right before lunch where everybody looks really hungry and tired. So eat some sugar, drink some coffee. Nope, no coffee. Jamie will get upset. In here? Oh, okay, new rules. So I wanted to follow up a little bit on what Jason kind of started with this morning. He was talking about kind of what LSIC is, what it started out as 5 years ago. By the way, the first national kickoff was 1 week before we all went into COVID quarantine and the world changed. So it was like the last time I saw people for a while. And he talked kind of about what we are, why. But I want to talk for a moment about why and just give a little more context there. There's a couple of reasons it's really important. Number one, for technology, everything that we do involves technology. So a lot of times we'll talk with our organizational hats on. You'll hear us say, this is for science, this is for exploration. The bottom line is it's all one story. It's all one mission. And everything we do requires technologies. And that goes for on Earth and in space. And it's critical. And so when we looked around at all the different forums that were out there, there really wasn't anything that just focused on technology, that worked with all of those communities to come together and say, what do we need to do to create a cohesive plan? We used the sustainability word a lot. We used that a lot early in Artemis. If you remember the days where everybody would kind of give their definition of what sustainability was. Now we're doing that with infrastructure. And from day one, what we said from LSIC's perspective is, if you don't get those novel technologies mature enough to be infused into the mission, scaled up and infused into institutional capabilities, then it's all for naught, right? We can't innovate. And that goes for us as a country here on Earth and in space. So we wanted to have this kind of community where we could all get together and not only have fun talks like this, but have those focus groups, have those thematic workshops, do studies and assessments, and have real-world conversation. So I always like to reiterate when we're at these meetings that I want you to know when you go out to the breakout groups from here, when you do the focus groups each month, all of those things, the workshops, your feedback does not go into a black hole. This was designed from day one, where APL is a fantastic system integrator. They're not only facilitating LSIC's fun, but it exists so that we are not in an echo chamber. It exists so that we can work as an integrated community to talk about how to use technologies for science and exploration and get those missions on the moon and Mars. So I just want to say thank you, and I wanted to talk about that why a little bit. Let's see, and the other point I wanted to bring up on the technology side is it's kind of ironic to me the more I think about it. a lot of times everybody understands why we need technology development. I can talk to, like Clayton said, a young class, I don't know, about 3 years old, but I may not be as good at that, but let's just say second, third grade. And they understand technologies. The first thing they ever ask me is, can you 3D print an iPhone? When can you do that? I'm going to be excited. Where's Terry from Nokia? Let me know when we can do that, Terry. But the bottom line is that we have to, hold on a second. If we keep putting off those technologies to tomorrow, then if you're 10 years out today, you're going to be 10 years out next year, and 10 years from now, you're still going to be 10 years out. So in order to infuse and incorporate those into the missions, you have to start today. So that's kind of my soapbox I wanted to say, and I know hopefully it's kind of a kumbaya here with this crowd, but I think we have to keep stressing how important that is. So if I go to the next chart. So now let's talk about what comes next. So what do we mean when we say infrastructure? Infrastructure is the fundamental physical and organizational structures and facilities needed to function effectively. It is what we all need. So earlier, someone asked a really good question about how we can all work together more and not have too many cooks in the kitchen, but share cost. The thing about technology is that's beautiful. We have a lot of early and mid TRL technologies that need to be advanced and matured so they can be scaled up and infused, that have common needs across terrestrial and space applications in all the areas we're talking about. So if we co-invest in getting that maturation done, then the applications may differ, the missions may differ, but we all can co-invest in getting them to that point. And that's kind of one thing I consider to be infrastructure. So establishing that infrastructure is the essential step that we all need to go from the shorter-term Apollo-like missions to even discuss having the longer-term missions on the Moon and Mars. We have to evolve the footprints to foundations. And that's a paradigm shift for us as well, by the way. So what does this translate to in terms of lunar infrastructure? So as I mentioned, today's novel technologies must become tomorrow's institutional capabilities. If I had to give you one statement just to repeat over and over, I had a bumper sticker, it would be that. Because the novel technologies are cool, right? We can do this all day long, it's fun, everybody's excited about it. But what are we trying to do? Why are we investing in those? It is so we can mature them where they become our normal capabilities that we infuse into these missions. And we need to be doing that now. Capabilities need to be deployed. We need to be able to return to them and reuse them. That is part of having infrastructure. And our assets need to become aggregated surface systems so that we can establish a U.S. presence and bolster our commercial capabilities. So this goes back to what Clayton called it, commodes and roads. I usually call it pipes and roads, but hey, commodes too. But yeah, what do we need to do to establish kind of that basic infrastructure to make that happen? So, someone asked about lift earlier, and this is where I want to talk some about that. So what do we really mean when we say establish it? We're doing some really cool stuff. I mean, one of the main focuses of this meeting this year, the spring meeting, and will be on the upcoming panel and several of the panels, is how in short 5 years, how many technologies have been matured enough that they have either flown to the moon, you'll be hearing about those on the panel, but we have more, we have probably triple that number, if not more, of technologies in that same time period that were advanced. They've been through high fidelity ground testing, through dirty TVACs and environmental testing, and are waiting for mission infusion opportunities. We do as much as we can on the ground, but the moon's a tough environment. And there's some things that are just really foundational knowledge, the kind of if-thens that we need to get up there and test for components, systems, subsystems, all of the above. So when we talk about establish, it is to set up, create, or found something in a firm or stable way. And I'm going to pull on that word stable a lot. I think that stability of a plan is what we all need. Jason, you referred earlier to being impressed with the Chinese booth that you saw at IEC. And I agree, and that part of that is they have a stability and a plan that they are sticking with and checking off that box. So we need to be able to do that. So what have we seen in 5 years from the community in terms of consistent feedback, regardless of the capability area, regardless of if we're at a workshop or a monthly focus group, what comes up over and over again? And it's really centered around the need for NASA as a government entity to chart a path for emerging Moon and Mars capabilities that we can evolve from missions to markets. So this theme is not only from the LSIC participants over the last 5 years, but we also had a tremendous response to the 2020 Lunar Infrastructure Foundational Technologies, the mission RFI that we put out. Now at that time, what we were planning was an RFI followed up with an RFP for a singular mission, right? Looking at how to extract oxygen from regolith. But just like Clayton said, you cannot, is it okay? Okay. You cannot just do ISRU without power, without mitigating the dust, without some mobility, some autonomy, surviving the environment. So all of these things you get to test and raise the TRL of. But what we saw was the feedback of, okay, that's great, just like the CLIPS missions are great. But is that kind of again, the footprints versus the foundations? How do we build something that we can come back to, creating both a commercial ecosystem that can grow from that, as well as being able to test and develop these technologies, of which a huge percentage are extensible to Mars. So a lot of the feedback was NASA needs to establish a national plan beyond isolated landings that provides a stable demand signal and infusion path for the burgeoning U.S. commercial ecosystem. That has been a resounding, unanimous feedback. Technologies and architecture should culminate in a cohesive infrastructure that can be used and reused by future missions for commercial lunar ecosystem and/or Mars extensibility. And industry technologies that are matured via NASA awards. We talked earlier, and partnerships, very importantly. We talked earlier about ACOs and tipping points and SBIRs. We have done so many of those. We'll be sharing some metrics soon on that we're trying to validate. But over the last 5 years, our small Lunar Surface Innovation Initiative, LSI team, has worked across all the different programs, mission directorates, and with industry to create literally hundreds of opportunities and grants and SBIRs and ACOs and tipping points and prizes and challenges. Every mechanism out there, we have utilized it. But how do we, once those are done, even if they're wildly successful, where do they go next, right? How do we build upon those in an organized way, cohesive way? And I'll note that many of those partnerships have had considerable IRAD investments that are to be incorporated into the infrastructure. These are true partnerships. Our tipping points require real skin in the game from our industry partners, and that's a model that we're moving more and more to. So we stepped back and thought about this, and the truth is, you're right. The truth is, that is what we are all struggling with, is how do we build upon what we're doing? So in direct response, NASA and APL, we've been working together really hard to create a framework for a future RFP, hopefully sooner rather than later, but I cannot give a date today, and it is certainly budget dependent, but we have got a really robust framework for an RFP that leverages our U.S. industry's innovation to develop a mission-driven technology pipeline. And that would create a cost-effective, minimum viable lunar surface infrastructure with commercial lunar and/or Mars extensibility. And you can see the areas there. A lot of the areas have been talked about or touched upon today in both Jason's, Clayton's, and John's talks. But these are, again, these are kind of, common sense. If you talk to anyone to live and operate in an environment, these are capabilities that you're going to need. So the key there is we don't think it's going to be one mission. It really is, and I know the word roadmap is overused. That's why I'm using framework. But the thing I do like about a roadmap is it has to be aligned with a viable, realistic schedule and budget. And Clayton said it well earlier when he said, we are going to do all of these things. They have to be done. The timeline, the phasing, the sequencing, if they're in serial or parallel, all of that is dependent on that technical need, as well as our schedule and our budget aligning. So we are very excited, and I think we've got an excellent framework for exactly how to do that and to create that infrastructure that you can build upon, really leveraging this community's innovation and experience. We want to get more stuff flown. So with that said, I am going to skip now to the next slide. Oh, actually, I don't want to show you that yet. I'm going to talk about it first. So speaking of all the ways that we need to be working together and partnering, I want to emphasize how critical it is not only to invest in the technologies themselves, but just as deliberately to invest in the people and the skill sets required to ensure that our nation can really stay on the cutting edge of technology. And that really is key to life right here on Earth, as well as for space exploration. So I'm proud to say that the Lunar Autonomy Challenge that we just wrapped up is a beautiful example of exactly that. This was with Caterpillar, APL, Embodied AI, and NASA all working together. So this challenge was not just another coding competition. These students were part of creating a real-world space exploration testbed by creating a digital twin of the very complex and challenging lunar environment, and boy, is it. It mimicked the rugged terrain, low lighting, and extreme constraints of the moon's south pole. Now, what they did, the work that they did, will be used. It's going to help to inform the ground testing, the design, and even the mission planning for the pilot excavator rover at Kennedy Space Center. And if Jason Schuler is in the room anywhere, he's right there over there in the center. He's the project manager at Kennedy Space Center. And I highly recommend tomorrow when we have our showcase that you stop by the booth there and see that, as well as a video of the students' designs. So I want to first begin by applauding the remarkable talent, the ingenuity, and the perseverance of all 31 student teams who took part in the challenge. We witnessed everything that Clayton noted earlier regarding how important it is to inspire. But in this case, I can honestly say that these students probably inspired me more than we inspired them. We do have several of the challenge team members online and in the audience. And I would like to thank, I know Eric Reiner is online. He's busy at work at the Lunar Robotics Challenge. Just want to say thank you to Eric. I wish I could really clone his vision for how we can all work together to develop the skill sets that we need here on Earth and in space. And now, drum roll, please, is now I can flip the chart to announce the winners. So first place is we have the Nav Lab team at Stanford University. And I hope not to embarrass her too badly, but I think we have the faculty advisor, Grace Gow, here in the audience. Are you here, Grace? Here she is. Thank you. And Grace, I think you've been coming to these since 2023-ish. I believe, and we're so happy to have you, but congratulations to your team, and thank you. Thank you for taking the time. I know that's a lot of extra work, but boy, does it pay off. Second place is the Maple team at MIT, and third place is the Moonlight team from Carnegie Mellon. So please join me in giving them a round of applause. They give us confidence that a robust, capable aerospace workforce is on the rise. And more than that, they're all people that we may be depending on, or will be, I'll say for me, depending on to operate and manage our future surface infrastructure missions that we're working to build today for the Moon and Mars. So this is our future workforce. So with that, I'll break, and I don't think we were taking any questions for this part. If we have time, I don't mind, but I will say the panel that's coming up, I have to look. Are we out of time? Oh, time. Okay, good. All right, they'll be happy. So we do have a panel coming up that kind of naturally leads from what I just talked about now into the panel with a lot of our projects that flew to the moon. So, yeah, coffee time.
want to say one thing. If you're trying to order pizza right now, because we can see people trying to do it, make sure you pick the location to be the K-Center, or they're going to take your pizza somewhere else on campus, and we don't want that to happen for you. But those pizza orders from that food truck won't happen until right around lunch anyway, so give us a little time on that. But we have an extra long coffee break right now, so go out, get some coffee, get some snacks, and we'll come back in here for our first panel. right, we're going to let everybody get a little situated.
Good to see you.
Hey. Okay, everyone. Let's take our seats. I feel like a rebel with this coffee.
We hope you got some sleep.
I don't know about you guys, having coffee at the podium in this auditorium right now feels like the greatest day of all time. Been here 10 years, first time I've ever been able to do it. Our managing executive will be cleaning it up if it's dirty.
Absolutely. Yep.
All right, guys.
Where are you coming from? Nokia Labs? Yes, but physically. Physically.
You guys are great every time. It's magical how that works with kids and and adults every time. Nikki is getting situated. Okay, that was a great kickoff today. So excited to have everybody here. I'm glad you got your drinks, you're in here. We're gonna get into our first panel. Okay. We're gonna get into our first panel, and this one's gonna be moderated by Nikki, who spoke a little earlier, and this one is called Taking Innovation to the Moon. Go ahead, Nikki.
Welcome back. So we're going to do this in kind of like an informal way. It's not going to be a super formal panel. We're going to go down the table, and folks are going to present just a couple of charts, a handful of charts, just to set the stage. I do want to note, first of all, we should just stop and say, everyone here has been to the moon. Not them, but you know what I mean. Like, so.
Unfortunately.
To the moon. So we're learning a lot, and kind of what I wanted to do at this 5-year kind of milestone is say, take a moment to appreciate how much work has been done over the last 5 years to the point that not only did they get to the moon, those technologies have been matured, created in many cases, and matured in that 5 years and flown, which is huge. And they've been done a lot through tipping points, ACOs, SBIRs, and I want to say a lot of those require company IRAD. So these are true partnerships where we're in this together. So we wanted to start today off with some of the folks that have been to the moon, but for every one of them, and including them, I have lists of hardware, technology that we need to be testing that has been all the way through, high TRL, high fidelity ground testing and dirty TVACs, environmental testing, that are saying, where do I go now? How do I get a flight, right? How do I get, and so that's gonna be a lot of the discussion for the rest of the week as well. But we wanna talk here about lessons learned, what comes next, and all of that stuff. So with that said, and it will be mostly an informal kind of dialogue with questions back and forth after they do the brief presentations to set the stage. So I think, I haven't looked at the program. Are we starting with Thierry? Is that?
Charge, you decide.
Who's next, Jamie? What's the first slide package? Right, is it just down? Okay. So it should be, yeah, there you go. Perfect. We planned it just that way. Good.
I think I'll stand. It's maybe just a little bit easier.
Okay, yeah.
All right. Thank you, Nikki. Oh, I'm supposed to sit? Okay. So I'm messing things up by not sitting down, and okay, sorry about that. Good morning. I'm Thierry Klein. I'm president of Bell Labs Solutions Research at Nokia. As you may know, Bell Labs is the research part of Nokia, now part of Nokia, and this year we celebrate 100 years. So congratulations to LSIC on 5 years. I look forward to being back for 100 years.
It's kind of like dog years, though, right? I mean.
Thank you, Nikki, for the invitation to be here today. I want to tell you a little bit about what we've been doing with deploying the first cellular network on the moon as part of the IM-2 mission. And you could really ask, like, why are we doing this? Why we're looking at cellular technologies? And we heard this morning from, I think from Clayton and from John about the airline industry. I would give you another analogy. Think about the telecom industry. Think about the communication capabilities we had 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 20 years ago, or at the time when we went to the moon in the 60s and early 70s. I would also ask you, think about COVID without your smartphone and your broadband access to the home. So think about how far we've come in the telecom industry and the communication capabilities that actually we take for granted today. How many of you can imagine your one day without your smartphone? All right. Now ask your kids.
Yeah, a day.
So we started on this journey. Bell Labs, we actually have been working on communication in space way back. Maybe not well known, but in 1962, we built the first communication satellite called Telstar. And on this particular journey, we started back in 2018, and we started thinking about the lunar economy and the great interest in going back to the moon, going to Mars. And all these pretty pictures you see of what a lunar economy looks like, you realize that none of that will happen without communication. We're talking about connecting not just astronauts, but also connecting rovers, machines, drilling equipment, transportation systems, and all of that requires a lot of communication. It's not just voice communication, but more and more it's data, imaging, sensor data, high-definition video, and all of that should be connecting multiple devices that need to be coordinated. So we started looking at that and saying, all of this is really great and it's fantastic, and a lot of great technology needs to happen for that lunar economy to be real, but none of it will happen if we don't connect these assets and we don't allow them to communicate and share data. So that sounds like a really interesting and really tough challenge. Bell Labs, we like tough challenges. But then we also said, like, well, we're the guys who built the advanced communication technologies for terrestrial applications. Why we're not looking to take those same technologies and bring them to space and bring them to the moon and eventually to Mars? So that's really where the journey started for us, and saying we should take the same technologies that connect billions of devices that all of you have in your pockets today. We should take those same technologies, bring them to the moon. But of course, a cellular network on the moon will look very different from a cellular network on Earth, even if it's built on the same standards-based technologies. So we started thinking, how do we reconceptualize what a cellular network looks like? How do we build it for the environment, for the mechanical stresses, the temperature, radiation, and all of that? And that led us to working with STMD and Tipping Point, and we were very fortunate to be awarded a Tipping Point in 2020 to build that network and deploy it on the moon as part of the IM-2 mission, working in partnership with Intuitive Machines, but also with Lunar Outpost for payloads that we connected. And so we launched at the end of February on IM-2. These are some pictures. You've seen some of these pictures. I think Clayton had a video from IM. Proud to say that our equipment is in the picture, and you typically find the Nokia network when you see these two semicircles in pictures that are in the, I circled them here in the blue circles, but you typically see two semicircles. That's our radiator. Underneath it, you see a gray rectangle. That's your entire cellular network in something a little bit bigger than a small pizza box. So we launched end of February. I claim we have the fastest network. My optical colleagues say you measure in bits per second. I claim the fastest network is measured in miles per hour. And then, as you know, what happened on the IM-2 landing, it landed off nominally, but we were still able to turn the network on. So after landing, after the Athena lander was in the crater, we still managed to get power for a short window of time, and we turned the network on. And that's a major, major proof point for us, saying we took cellular technology that we deploy on Earth, we reconceptualized what that network looked like from a swap perspective, from an autonomy perspective. It's an autonomous network that's self-deploying. We ruggedized it so that it would survive a launch, a landing, and it survived what I think is a rougher landing than anticipated. So it survived that, and when we were able to apply power to it, we could turn it on, and we could command it, we could send telemetry data to it, we get health data back, and we have evidence that it was a fully operational cellular network. We were supposed to connect two payloads. One was a rover from Lunar Outpost, and one was a hopper from Intuitive Machines. We have evidence that the equivalent of your smartphone was also operational after landing. Unfortunately, the network and the device were not operational at the same time, so we didn't make the first cell phone call, but we had an operational network, and that, I think what Nikki said earlier, is really proof that we really advanced the TRL for cellular networks in space. I think we'll get to a lot of questions, and happy to talk more about it. I just want to leave you with a couple of thoughts. For us coming from the telecom industry, the ecosystem and partnering with NASA, but also with other commercial companies is just paramount to making this happen. I fundamentally believe that innovation is really at the intersection of disciplines, and innovation is at the intersection of industries. And us partnering with the space industry really unlocks a lot of the potential of the technologies. We also need to have a long-term vision, and we have to have strategic objectives. And then in Bell Labs, we like this concept of future back. So we imagine what the future would look like. We imagine the disruptive technologies we need, but then we need to start building a plan from here towards that goal. We cannot take just incremental steps and then figure out what the step is after we take the first step and then figure out what the second step is. Yes, we need to take the incremental steps, but they have to build on the plan towards a bigger goal. Because otherwise, if you just take the first step, you might go in one direction and then you change course. So you have that ambition, you have that long-term plan, and then you incrementally take the steps towards it. You learn every step along the way. And a number of people say, well, the mission failed, you didn't make the cell phone call. For us, it's not a failure. The network worked, we learned a lot, we collected a lot of data, and we make progress, and next time we'll make that cell phone call. So I'll stop here and turn it over to my colleagues. Thank you.
Yeah. And real quick, before Stephen says, I just want to point out too, as important as the technologies are, having the, as nerdy as this sounds, acquisition methodologies, partnering mechanisms are so important. So real quickly, because it'll apply to a lot of people here, the IM2 mission that we're talking about, we should pause and say, I'm very proud we created that mission. That was not one of the planned Eclipse missions. It came about by the Prime payload. STMD went to SMD and said, hey, we would like to use your services to facilitate this, and put out that for Prime. IM came back and said, you know what, we'll do a whole mission for Prime and we'll sell the rest of the space. And then independently, totally different process and group, the tipping point calls were reviewed, and Nokia got selected, and then IM's deployable hopper got selected through the tipping points. And then when we looked at these, it was like, wow, this just makes sense, right? And so we inserted that whole Intuitive Machines 2 mission. So it can be done. Precedent has been set. And even then, it was like, at first, the procurement and legal folks were like, what? What have you done? But it all worked out, right? We set precedent doing that, so.
At Intuitive Machines, it's really proud that IM2 is only about less than 50% funded by CLIPS. We had STMD, we had corporate partners. It's a really good example of how an international, multi-organizational project can work and actually work on the moon.
Okay, so that, Stephen, yeah.
Great, happy to be here. I'm Steve Indike. I'm Director of Space Systems at Honeybee Robotics. Historically, Honeybee's gotten some pretty good work on the surface of Mars. We have instruments on Spirit and Opportunity, Curiosity and Perseverance, as well as other landers that have been to the Red Planet. And part of that, we've done a lot of work with scientists for planetary science. And a lot of things they care about, as you might assume, is the planetary surfaces, the material, what you can analyze, potentially even what you can bring back. But what I'm going to be talking about today from the Honeybee side is our first hardware that landed on the lunar surface. So we've been talking, on our side, we've been talking about lunar sampling for many, many years. years. And I'm really happy and privileged to show off some of the cool videos and hardware that we did get there. So I'm going to talk about 3 specific instruments, right? We had 2 really great landings just, Jesus, like 2 months ago. It comes by so, time goes so quick here. But from the Honeybee side, we landed our Trident drill as part of the Prime 1 package on the Intuitive Lander. And then we landed our PlanetVac and Lister sampling systems on Firefly's Blue Ghost. So I'm going to talk a little bit about each one of those in a little more detail. And I'm going to make sure my slides are in the right order because somebody, me, didn't put them in the right order. So here's the very first slide. So here's our Trident drill. This is a quick introduction to our Trident drill. It's a 1 meter class drill, so it's a drill that can sample up to 1 meter deep. It's a very versatile drill. It can go through things like soft material, hard material, fragmented material. It's a rotary percussive drill, so think of like a jackhammer percusses to break up anything that's really hard. It's rotary to kind of scoop out and move any of the lighter or broken up material out of the borehole. As part of this, I'll also say a rotary percussive drill is the most versatile form of drilling for any of these unknown surfaces out there. If you want to go to Mercury, we haven't put anything on Mercury, hint, hint. A rotary percussive drill is probably the sort of sampling system you might want on an unknown surface. Interestingly enough, both Curiosity and Perseverance's drills on the end of the robotic arm also use the same mechanism, a rotary percussive drill. So a lot of the work that Honeybee's done for Trident, this 1 meter class drill, has been done better part of 20 years. So you probably have seen some of these slides in the past. But it's taken a very long time to develop this technology to be ready to go on the lunar surface. One of the cool parts about Trident is it's such a versatile and capable drill that we built 2 of them, one for Prime 1 and the other for Viper. We'll talk about Viper maybe another day.
Well, real quick, though, that is an important point. The reason Space Tech was flying, this is what I was saying about it's all one big story, right? The reason we were flying Prime with the Trident drill and the mass spec, that's the exact same drill and mass spec that was going on Viper. So it was raising the TRL of those technologies and testing it out, so that was intentional as well. Yeah.
Yes. And also on the Honeybee side, it's more efficient, more cost efficient to build multiple of one item as well. The scientists were very eager for data and results from this. Unfortunately, as we know, wrong order of slides, that's my fault again. Going back, I swear, spoiler alert. There we are. Unfortunately, as we know, the lander did not land nominally, but some of the success we can take away from our Trident drill in operations on the lunar surface is we were able to operate the full suite of capabilities of the drill. Again, it's 3 actuators. It's a rotary percussive. It rotates, it percusses, and then it extends down the Z stage to create that 1 meter borehole. So in this case, we were able to operate all the capabilities that the drill has. Unfortunately, we just didn't get a lot of very interesting data from the exosphere of the lunar surface. So hopefully for next drill operations, we'll get some actual regolith. Moving ahead, the second one I'm going to talk about is our PlanetVac system. So PlanetVac, the short version here, it's a vacuum cleaner, except in cleaning. Instead of cleaning the lunar surface, you're trying to collect the material and you're trying to analyze it or look at it in some way. So this is just a high-level slide basically saying you take this cone, you put it on the lunar surface, you hit pneumatics on it. In a vacuum, pneumatics are very powerful. It disturbs a lot of the material that's there. In this case, we're talking about lunar regolith, primed to get kicked up. And then you pass that material down the path of least resistance. In this case, we're funneling that material down a tube into a captive area. This last part of the slide, category 3 there, is basically saying that PlanetVac is a very versatile system. So if you want to capture, you want to sieve, you want to take that material that you just collected and put it in somewhere else in an instrument or a method for sample return, you can do all of those things with a sample that you've collected. In this case, we were trying to just analyze some of the material or just collect it and then do a little coupon sample. Let's see if this will play. Here we go. So in this case, we're deploying the PlanetVac cone. You can see that white cone towards the right of it, and there we're firing the pneumatics. As I said, there's a lot of energy in those pneumatics, so you can see some of that debris getting kicked out from all around that cone. And then a lot of that material is also going into that cone and down the sampling path into a container, which I'll show you a picture of in a moment. Can I play that again? I always love that video. Oops, that's the container. But I'll also note here, maybe I wore out my welcome on trying to play it. Let's see, maybe that'll go again. Yeah, thank you.
Technology.
We can get things on the moon, but I can't figure out a clicker, can I? So anyways, in this you'll see there's such energy in those pneumatics that you'll see this little rock get kicked out as well, come right up and go back down. So again, pneumatics in a vacuum, very powerful. So where a lot of the material was thrown out in different directions, a lot of the material did make it into the sample cone collection system. So here is a before and an after sampling image of the inside container. On the left, you can see a clean, pristine sampling container. On the right, you can see a notable amount of the material that's towards the back end of the sampling container. You'll also note one of the experiments we included in here is a material coupon test. So at the back, you can see those little square coupons of different material to basically see, for future potential dust mitigation methods, what material the regolith seemed to stick to the most in this sort of processing method. Again, misplaced slides. Who did that? Moving on to our third and final piece of hardware that made it to the lunar surface, LSIC. LSIC is a heat flow probe measuring device. It's using a technology called coil line drilling. So instead of a rotary percussive drill, we're basically taking a rod, a curled rod, we're unfurling that curled rod into a linear tube, injecting pneumatics, again, high energy, below the surface to excavate and bore a deep hole. In this case, we were aiming for 3 meters of depth. This is a test video from our lab hardware. A lot of this work takes a lot of environmental testing. On the far right, you'll see the actual test chamber with lunar simulant, with the lunar simulant bin below it. On the left are, did that skip? Let me see. Yeah, here we go. Ooh, we're going to get a bigger video than I thought here. I tried to crop out the front of it. I guess I don't know how to make PowerPoint slides anymore. Anyways, it'll show the major components. I think in just about 30 seconds, it'll get through to the actual video clip that I wanted to show, but I won't replay this one because I don't think we need to see all this again and again. Anyways, what you see here is the actual LSIC probe in animated form. There's the coil line tubing that I mentioned, and in a moment, you're going to see it unfurl and extend down, lowering the boom. At the end of the boom is a thermocouple at the end to take thermal measurements, as well as a gas nozzle. To do the excavation of the lunar material. And there you can see a deflector shield there being put on in the animation. And here, so now we see the actual simulant bin on the right. This is what I intended for everybody to see. Apologies for the preface. But in this case, you're going to start to see the boom lower. It's hard to see in the test bin, but you can see on the animation where that boom is in the process. And on the right, you'll see again, there's our application of the pneumatics in the lunar vacuum chamber. And then the dust kind of settles out. So that's basically how LSIC bores a hole. One of the parts that I thought was very impressive about all the testing is it looked very similar to what data we actually got back in flight and what imagery we got back from flight. So let's see if this one's playing. Here we go. So you can see the LSIC probe on the left as it's lowering down and starting to inject pneumatics into the surface. So in just a moment, you'll see a rather large burst of pneumatics come out, kicking up a lot of debris. It looks pretty similar to the test videos. It performed similar to the tests that we did in chambers here terrestrially. And that's just some of the sampling that we were able to do, or some of the borehole creation we were able to do there. I think with that, I'll pass the mic to the next side.
Two quick notes. One, I meant to ask earlier, and I know, Terry, you did it when you talked about the tipping point, but if you could, when you're talking, please also talk about if there are any NASA partnerships or awards, what mechanisms that we're working together using, because that thing just helps everybody understand, because Honeybee has been through the whole spectrum of small
Yeah.
business and grown and the whole works, so.
Yeah, and I can mention that real briefly. We've gotten a lot of SBIR work. We've gotten a lot of tech transfer work as well, tech flights, a whole slew of funding sources from different NASA programs to help develop this hardware to actually reaching the lunar surface. Again, Trident has been in development in different forms for at least 20 years at this point. Planet Vac not far behind it, and similar to Lister. Lister's been in the works for at least 15 years as well. It's also interesting to say with Planet Vac, I forgot to mention it, it's such a versatile capability. It's also flying on the JAXA MMX mission, which is the Martian Moon Express, which will bring back the first Mars material from the Mars planetary system. It's a returning sample from Phobos, one of the moons of Mars.
It's a really, really good example of how it doesn't happen overnight, right? And that all these beautiful videos that you're seeing in missions is a culmination of that TRL maturation that's been happening for a couple decades and the company growing as a result. And then the other point real quick before I turn over to the next speaker, Kristen John, I saw a tear glistening from her eye as she was watching the video. She is our technical integration lead for LSI, but she is also and has been for a while our dust mitigation lead. So Kristen, raise your hand. She was crying at your beautiful imagery. And that's a perfect lead in over here to Josh for EDS.
We're going to...
Oh, Tibor, oh shoot. Okay, yeah, that's right, he's online. Can Tibor hear us? And you're gonna do the flipping?
Yes, I can.
Hi, Tibor. Yeah, you go ahead and introduce yourself and we'll flip your charts.
Thank you so much for being there, at least virtually. So greetings from Luxembourg, from the Space Resources Week actually, so that it's a very similar stuff. But it's really, really great to be there, at least virtually. So, and I would like to give just a very short introduction about our little company. It's a small company. Next slide, please. So we started as a Google Lunar X Prize team. It was just the crazy idea of me to set up a team in Hungary to go forward to the moon. And then to start with that, we founded Pulley Space. Pulley is a dog breed. It has a meaning, so that's the reason I tell you, if you don't know that. So if you have seen Mark Zuckerberg's dog, this is also a Pulley, actually. So, but again, so Pulley is not that young company, but we have been struggling to collect money, to raise money in Hungary for this crazy idea to send the Hungarian rover to the moon, but we survived. And then 2021, we got a Hero X award, actually. We call it NASA award, which led us to develop our instrument, the Pulley Lunar Water Snooper. I will tell you a little bit more about that, which is on the moon right now. So, and this happened on IM-2 mission as well. So next slide, please. So we just got the history was just we built a prototype, we tested them in lunar-like environments, the moon-like environments, or rover, and we learned a lot about the lunar environment. And so that reason we started to check what can we measure actually, can we monitor the lunar environment. And in this case, we developed also the idea how can we look for water ice, and this is our next slide, which is our hopefully future. So we would like to be a prospecting company. About water ice, just to tell you something, one of the potential resources or potential useful resources on the moon is water ice, not only for giving actually so the water for the potential astronauts, but it could be basic for rocket fuel, as you know. And I think that this is one of the most important things. We want to get really a permanent presence on the moon with solid logistic systems, and we need some fuel depots actually. That's the reason so we just turned our attention also just to look at such things. Next slide, please. I don't go into details. We developed a neutron spectrometer. Neutron spectroscopy is one of the potential means to detect hydrogen in the upper 1 meter of the lunar surface. It is just the physics, cosmic ray are hitting the solar, the regolith and generate neutrons, and these neutrons can hit hydrogen atoms losing energy. So that means that if we have some neutron spectrometer showing low energy neutrons and a lot with high energy neutrons, and we can see an enhanced number of low energy neutrons, that means that there is probably a lot of hydrogen, which is probably water ice or something similar. So that means that neutron spectroscopy is a proven tool actually to look for that. Next slide, please. And just some examples, we have already some neutron spectrometer around the moon, and mostly on orbit. There was an attempt to get a neutron spectrometer on Peregrine 1. It unfortunately didn't succeed. So in that sense, our neutron spectrometer is actually the first Hungarian instrument on the moon. And I come to explain a little bit more about that. Next slide, please. So we have been we are using CMOS sensors to detect neutrons. Again, I don't want to go into much details, but it's actually the following stuff. So we use high quality scientific CMOS sensors to detect neutrons. Neutrons are neutral, as the name says. That means that we need something which helps us to detect them. So the idea is here just to get a very, very thin neutron sensitive layer on the CMOS sensor, which generates actually a reaction with the incoming neutron. And this reaction generates charged particles, which makes a flash on the CMOS sensor. So that means that we are counting flashes or making images and then counting flashes on the neutron, on the CMOS sensor. So this is the basic principle for our instrument. One CMOS sensor is just as it is. It's for the background. We can also measure actually the background radiation with that. The two other ones are identically prepared with this neutron sensitive layer. And we have a so-called gadolinium shield before of one of these prepared sensors just to get rid of the low energy neutrons. Gadolinium is just shielding against low energy neutrons. So that means that with these three sensors, we are able to get neutron spectroscopy. So we can go for the next slide, please. And this happened actually with, Nikki knows about that. It was Honey, I Shrunk the NASA payload. It was just a challenge by NASA and HeroX in 2020. First, it was an idea competition, if you like. So the goal was just to look for alpha CubeSat range instruments which can do something useful on the moon. So this, we just picked up this idea what we had since 2018 or something like that on the shelves. Our colleague at David Luciani, he's the father of the idea. He's actually in his free time, or in his daytime job at CERN in the radiation to electronics group. So, and then we said, okay, this is something which we can try. We put together everything. We won the first prize in the idea stuff, and the second run, actually a sequel, we could make a convincing project plan and budget. It was the request by Honey, the Honey Shrunk the NASA payload, the sequel. Can we produce it in 1 year? And we did it. We produced in 1 year actually moon-ready instruments. We delivered it to the Jet Propulsion Laboratory in February, and so this is what came to the moon. That was also something very funny in that sense, because on the way to GPL, we talked to Intuitive Machines in Houston and showed them the instrument, and they said, oh, this is great, actually leave it here, because we have the hopper and we want to make some science and some search for water ice on the moon in the permanently shaded region. So this has happened, so we said, okay, we cannot leave it here because we have to give it to GPL, but we are happy, more than happy just to deliver another one. And we made an agreement actually, and in half an hour or something like that with Trent Martin and his colleagues in Houston. So they say, okay, we provide the instrument. Intuitive takes it as a private payload. They don't charge for us, and we are looking for potential data buyer actually. So because in that sense it was privately financed stuff. So next slide, please. Okay, this is just what we can deliver if it goes. And so next slide, please. So we came to intuitive machines, and actually something other funny thing happened. ESA just realized that we are flying with IM. It was also kind of good time, we have been on the right place at the right time, and we made the first data buy contract. As far as we know, this is the first ever deep space data cell contract with ESA, what we did. So when we flew on IM2, you know the fate of IM2, it's not the best, but actually, so we are, as Nokia, we are actually happy. The reason for that, we can show that we have been operating nominally during transit. We collected data from roughly halfway to the moon. We have been also operating on the lunar surface, and I think it's on the next image, next slide. Yeah, no, this is just the landing site. Can go further, please. Yeah, and this is the image what shows the lander actually lying on the crater. And since we got some data from the water snooper, we can just identify knowing the IMU data where we are, and you can see on the right picture actually this is green stuff. So we have been in the shadowed area. So this is what worked. So we got a short time. We have been operating nominally at -55, -60 temperature, which is out of the nominal operational temperature range. So we are in that sense happy. We have TRL 9. We got telemetry data from the surface of the moon. So this is good news for us. Next slide, please. You can see this is my laptop. It was roughly 11:15 in the night after the landing, so 4 hours after landing. And it was an emotional moment for me personally to see the first telemetry data coming from the moon, actually. So, and to finish it, the last slide I want to thank for all of the partners who made this possible. It was really a very good example on cooperation in a lot of ranges. Actually started with the Hero X project, where we got the help of GPL financing by that project. We have a very nice network in Hungary for design, manufacturing, everything, and testing with CERN as well. And the moon mission, as I mentioned, it was just together with Intuitive Machines. And I have to mention, we had a second snooper, water snooper on the Lunar Outpost map rover. Unfortunately, we didn't have the chance to see that working, but we think that it would have been the same. And again, this was the first deep space data buy thanks to Intuitive Machines, ESA, and our other partners. So this is what I just wanted to say. So it was a great journey for us, a very small company, and we are already working on the next mission to the moon.
Thank you, Tibor. Can you flip back to one of the images on IM2? I just want to pause here for a moment because this is what happens. So this initiative, LSII, and the consortium, I just want to pull on the kind of amazing things we can do when we work together and when we understand all the mechanisms out there. So Carol Galika back there, the Honey, I Shrunk the Payloads challenge that Tibor talked about, this really is the little payload that could. I mean, with very little funding and part of our cadre project with JPL, we started this prizes and challenges for any students here or any non-traditional space folks. Crowdsourcing prizes and challenges are amazing. I am dumbfounded regularly by the type of responses that we get, including this. So Tibor was one of the winners. That took him all the way through developing the hardware and doing the testing at JPL, as well as the mentoring, which really springboarded this business all the way to the moon and the data buy with ESA. So that is just really exciting and shows you how much we can do when we work together and really leverage the mechanisms that we have. So congratulations, Tibor, and I think that's it's very inspirational in itself.
Thank you so much also for your support, Nikki, and then for all the stuff. It was really, really a great moment for us just to see that we are on the moon.
Okay, excellent. Thank you, Tibor. And up next, we're going to talk the electrodynamic dust shield, I believe. Go ahead, Joe. It's over to you.
Hello, my name is Dr. Joe Toth. I am co-PI for the EDS payload that was recently brought to the moon aboard Firefly's Blue Ghost Mission 1. So a little bit of where I came from. So I'm working at the NASA Kennedy Space Center in the Electrostatics and Surface Physics Laboratory. This laboratory was founded in the late 90s to solve electrostatics problems for the agency. A lot of that revolves around analyzing and characterizing charge generation, electrostatic charge on all kinds of different space materials. But we also do technology development using electrostatic principles. A lot of this technology development is related to understanding planetary science, but also, and that's where the EDS comes into play, is we develop technology for dust mitigation. So the EDS is the electrodynamic dust shield. This shield is a relatively simple technology. All it really consists of is a set of electrodes that you can embed into pretty much any type of material. These electrodes are non-uniform in space, so when we apply a potential across them, there's a spatially changing electric field. And then we also apply an AC potential across them to make them non-uniform in time, and that lets us remove dust, as you can see in this video. Yep, there it goes. So real-time video, this is just a ground test right here, but we just apply voltage across the device, and it just blows the dust right off. So a little bit of the history of the EDS. So EDS has been around for a long time. I believe it was the late 60s when the first concepts of the EDS came around. It was electric curtain used to basically clear dust off of surfaces, move dust around. But it wasn't until our laboratory picked up the technology in the early 2000s where we started applying this technology for space applications. Back then, I believe we were targeted towards developing the EDS for Mars. Then later in that same decade, we started testing this device on reduced gravity flights to understand how the EDS works in a reduced gravity environment. We tested it with actual lunar samples to make sure that it could work. And then there was a little bit of a gap until the 2020s. Early 2020s, we started flying the EDS on the MISSI missions to the space station. This let us actually put the EDS technology and all of its associated electronics out into space to understand how the EDS can survive in the hostile environment of space. Around that same time, we also were manifested onto the CLPS 19D mission, which would become Firefly's Blue Ghost Mission 1. That was through the Game Changing Development Program. And then that's when we started pretty much working on the main project that I was kind of talking about earlier that we're going to be talking about. And then a few years later, we actually we were built onto the EagleCam payload. They had a bunch of cameras on their payload that they wanted us to put an EDS in front of in order to keep dust off of their camera lens. Unfortunately, there was not an opportunity for us to operate the EDS during EagleCam's mission. But then later, the next year, in 2025, earlier this year, Blue Ghost finally, they landed on the moon where we could actually demonstrate that technology. So, move here. So our payload is kind of shown in the top left there. We were stowed onto the fifth leg of the Firefly's Blue Ghost lander. And then eventually, when they landed on the moon, we were deployed directly onto the lunar surface. You can kind of see in that bottom left image there from the Scalps payload that was also on Firefly's lander. So we basically interfaced directly onto the surface. And then on the right here, in the big image there, those are the EDSs that we have aboard our payload. So on the left, we have a glass EDS. That's a set of electrodes embedded into a glass panel. On the right, we have a thermal radiator EDS, which is just an EDS that's placed underneath of a thermal radiating surface material. As you can see, this image here is taken right after we were deployed, and we are completely covered with dust, which was kind of surprising to me. Some of my colleagues might disagree with that, but for me, I was just shocked at how much dust we got just from simply deploying onto the lunar surface, which was good for us because we wanted to test how we can remove the dust, so getting dust on us was a good thing. And so I'll show you guys a video here. That is the real-time video of us removing dust. So we actually showed quite happily that we were able to remove dust off the surface. We ran a few more cycles, and eventually this is what the images we got to. So the glass EDS removed more than 95% of the dust off the surface. The thermal radiator didn't clear as much, but it still cleared fairly well, and we have reasons why that happened, but we were very happy with the demonstration of the EDS technology. So now that we've demonstrated the technology, the next steps is basically going to be trying to infuse this technology into future missions. The EDS is not a standalone technology. It basically exists so that way we can protect surfaces from dust. So we've developed EDSs for cameras, solar cells, thermal radiators. We make gasket EDSs, and we also develop technologies to convey dust using the EDS technology. So yeah, we work with a lot of different opportunities. We're constantly developing the EDS more and more for different programs and such. But yeah, the next major step is for anybody who wants to go to the moon, who's worried about dust. Well, we have the EDS ready to go.
Thank you, Joe. So real quick, though, I want to pause here because one thing here is different than the rest, right? Joe is from NASA, and this was a NASA payload, and I want to just talk about that after being the program director for the game-changing development, which is a lot of these projects, I guess all of these projects, these types of projects. I think there's a semantics issue or a way that we're communicating as well that we need to probably work on, and I would love some feedback. We're developing what I'm calling an infusion catalog for now. It's not the best name, but basically we have a lot of technologies and capabilities that we develop on the government side, and I think we probably could do a better job or need some feedback on how we talk about getting those published and tech transferred or open sourced. LSIC, for example, we've got databases there with test facilities and simulants and those sorts of things. But how do we connect those dots better? Because we are not developing this at NASA to really for us to fly it. We get the TRL up and we want to give it to you guys. And I think we could talk about how to make that process more efficient and effective. I can't remember which day is today, the lightning talks, Jamie? Yes. So part of our lightning talks was trying to have some of these projects here and mainly get across, like, here is the person you can contact if you're interested in this. Same thing goes for like data buys and those sorts of things as well. But I think that's an area that we need to work on. I think we have a lot of technologies like this that we want to publish and tech transfer out to everyone here that can use it. That said, I'll hand over to our last speaker.
All right, morning folks. My name is Niharika, and I'm going to talk about Hopper. So I was the project manager and the lead engineer for Hopper in the last year, which was our rocket-powered drone payload that flew on our IM-2 lander this past February and landed on the moon in the South Pole in March. So this was proposed through a tipping point award in 2020, and we started working on it in 2021. And as we kind of mentioned earlier, IM-2 was largely STMD between both the Nokia experiment and Hopper. So we flew that this year. So a little bit of background for Hopper itself, and I once again really want to thank STMD and NASA for the work and allowing us to work on Hopper. Hopper we started work on in 2021. I also graduated in 2021 and immediately came to Intuitive Machines and started working on the software for Hopper. So as Hopper grew in the last 4 years, I also very much grew as an engineer. And so Hopper's been instrumental to not only my development in software, but my ability to then lead the project. So up until last year, we had a different project manager who got promoted, and I was called in to fill in the spot. And so through Hopper, and these are pictures of our TVAC test. So we completed a full vehicle TVAC test in late 2023. It's one of the last things I did as the software lead on the project. And it was when Hopper first came up all together, and we got to test the full end-to-end system. Both Nokia and Pooley were involved. I have really great memories working with both your teams. For Nokia specifically, we went to Colorado for range testing. Really great memories working with all our partners involved. And here we did our TVAC test at Johnson Space Center. So that's that middle picture. And that was a week-long test we did. That was the first time that our team could see this really small vehicle. And you can't really tell the scale in that first picture. It has the IM-2 lander in the background. The Hopper comes about 3 feet tall, and so it's a very small vehicle doing very powerful science experiments. So I got the pleasure of taking Hopper from last year all the way to mission this year. So these are a couple pictures that we took in transit from Earth to the Moon, the first one being soon after launch vehicle separation, and you can see Hopper glowing gold in the bottom right corner there. Soon after we separated from the Falcon 9, we completed a transit checkout with Hopper, so that night of. Unfortunately, all Hopper shifts ended up being very late at night. I'm sure that helped for some of our payload customers. They actually got to do day shifts instead. But we completed a full transit checkout where we checked out almost every sensor and payload on board Hopper. So both the DLR radiometer and the Pooley Space water snooper were checked out. The Nokia radio on board Hopper was also powered up, and we saw a nominal power draw, though it was not connected to the BTS to see connectivity at the time. But that was the first time that a group of, for the most part, almost every lead on Hopper was under the age of 30. And so we got to take a big risk on Hopper through STMD to build this vehicle with relatively young and inexperienced engineers, and got to fly it in space, and that's the first time we powered it up. Between Earth and the Moon, we completed a series of thermal checks just to make sure Hopper was still happy. We worked through small issues with getting telemetry back to our payload customer. But by the time we got to the Moon, middle picture there, we got health data from our payloads down to our customers, and we checked out our entire system. The last picture is not long before our landing. Just another picture of Hopper with a nice long shadow on the lunar surface. So Nova-C landed in the south pole of the Moon. It is IM-2 Athena is the lander. It's landed the furthest south on the Moon as of right now, and though it did not land softly, as mentioned today, it did not land upright, we still completed hours of operations, not just on the lander, but on Hopper as well. So, mentioned before, we turned on the Nokia radio, and we saw a good current draw, though we didn't power it up with the BTS. We powered up the water snooper as well, and were able to get health telemetry down to our payload customers. We really matured the TRL on various components on Hopper, including the laser, including our nav sensors, payloads. So though we didn't complete a full mission hop, so the ideal was to complete one demonstration hop off of Nova-C onto the surface, we didn't complete that. We were able to mature a lot of technologies through Hopper, not just our own systems, but for our various partners and payload customers as well. So this was a brief summary of all the goals we did have with Hopper had Nova-C landed upright, primarily being an extreme mobility demonstration mission to prove out technology that would allow us to access areas on the Moon that rovers would not be able to easily access, such as permanently shadowed regions and craters or tops of hills. That was a major component. That was our actual proposal to STMD was our extreme mobility demonstration. Permanently shadowed region would be our 4th hop on the surface. We would have jumped into a crater, and the 5th hop would have been an autonomous hop back out of the crater to prove out the areas. Part of the extreme mobility is proving out areas that rovers can't get to at all and may be unsafe for humans to get to until they're explored, at least initially. So hoppers would be able to open up the avenue for not just permanently shadowed regions, but things like lava tubes to allow for a precursor mission demonstration before humans would be able to access them. Nokia, though the Lunar Outpost rover was the primary host for their experiment, Hopper did have a UE involved as well. We would have been able to test lack of line of sight tests when we were in the crater. We had 2 cameras on board. We were going to get some of the most high-res close-up imagery of the South Pole, and then the water snooper has been mentioned, and we also had DLRs, the German Space Agency's radiometer involved. So that long list of complex science and mission tasks really lent itself to building, having an STMD tipping point partnership. So all of those tasks are really high risk. They're low-level TRL. They're things that we haven't flown before. But they were things that we want to fly in the future, not just on hoppers, but through other missions as well. And so STMD was able to really help us define a mission goal, not specifically prioritizing things that NASA and other agencies will want in the future, such as the PSR. We also got testing support. We mentioned testing at JSC earlier. That was our TVAC testing. STMD was able to help facilitate that. And during our mission itself, we had engineers from NASA on board in our mission control room to help support the mission. So they were on console next to our mission directors and would be able to provide real-time explanation or priority support. On the flip side, as we talked about the risk aspect of this, STMD really supported in building up giving us a quick way to test and fail. Fly fast and test and fail fast. That's a motto that's going around in new space corporations in general. And with Hopper being such a high-risk mission, something that's never flown before with technologies that are almost have never flown before, almost dreamlike, we were able to grow a platform that we can sell further. We built it, and we've matured a lot of TRL through this STMD tipping point, and then we can build further ones through this knowledge that we know our system works. So that's allowing us to go through STMD first, and doing a NASA partnership really facilitated this.
Okay, and so, oops, is it on? Hello, is it, no? Okay, there it goes, okay. So I did want to say, does anybody here remember those credit card commercials where it was like a mom and a daughter go to New York City and they see Broadway shows and go shopping, spend all this money, and at the very end, and they show them like hugging, and then it says priceless, right? So I'll just say this is, to me, priceless. And there's so many things that we get from this kind of work, and so you just proved it right there with the skill sets. It may not be quantitative, right, but the experience and then having that team of folks of getting hands-on and ops experience and developing brand new technologies all within a few years and sending them to the moon is huge for both, you know, us personally, but also for our country and for the world, for getting to where we need to go. So congratulations on that. And I think we should share those things a lot more, because when you don't do them, none of this is possible when you don't grow those skill sets and along with the technologies. So skill sets, technologies, acquisition methods, and partnerships. Those are the 3 key points. Okay, so we have, let's see, 15 minutes, Jamie, right? And everybody's hungry, but we did get a lot of questions, and I was trying to kind of synthesize, because we have a lot of themes here. So let's see, I've got one. I'm going to kind of try to synthesize several different things that came up. So it is often said that a key role of the government is to provide the strategy and the stability to do the things that aren't yet profitable for industry and/or are common needs or challenges that multiple stakeholders need to be addressed to be successful. So in this vein, that would include things like, test facilities, many of you talked about, the subject matter expertise, R&D and publishing results from things like EDS, the different acquisition methodologies, but also just like the utilities and having interoperable systems. Interoperability comes up a lot as well. I've been kind of playing around with calling this something like community-driven IRAD, where NASA can help offset the cost of your IRAD that you're putting in. So in that vein, are there utilities or interoperable systems, GFE, GSE, or other infrastructure elements that would be most ideal for the government to establish? And if so, do you talk as a community to kind of identify what would be most helpful?
You want me to start?
Yeah, have at it.
All right. So I can start a little bit by, when you talk about utilities and infrastructure, one of the things that we were involved with last year was the Luna 10 challenge from DARPA, and I think that was a very good example of painting a picture of something that would be needed in the future for lunar economy, but then bringing together multiple companies across multiple sectors, because it's not just one piece of infrastructure that you need, it's understanding how the different pieces of infrastructure work together. And for us, coming from the communication side, it was, on one side, we were getting requirements from some of the other companies that were there, and I think you guys from Honeybee were there as well, getting requirements on the communication infrastructure. So we know the technology, but then the question is, what coverage area do you need? What throughput do you need to provide on this? So getting that requirement in, but on the other side, we were putting requirements on other companies that were part of the effort, for example, from power, from construction, and so forth. So it was really that multi-sector infrastructure, and I think that's one thing that the government can certainly do, articulate the long-term vision, and then bring the companies together that need to work together. It's not just one piece of infrastructure, but it all has to fit together. So I think that was that would be very helpful to understand how all the pieces fit together.
Yeah, Luna 10 is a great example, and I did want to point out, Daniel, here, if you can raise your hand. How many people here are familiar with LOGIC, the consortium interoperability? Yay, fantastic. So that chicken and egg kind of story, power, all the PNT stuff, that comes up a lot, and that's with DARPA. So if you don't know about it, reach out to this guy right here, and he'll get you connected. Anyone else on that question?
I think I already mentioned testing in my slides. I think that's a big component. You guys have the facilities already in place, and I know there's more getting built up that make it hard, these type of facilities, especially the ones that are big enough for spacecrafts, even the size of Hopper, are hard for corporations to make on their own. So having that kind of partnership with the government really helps.
Excellent. Okay. Next question. What is the one thing that you would change or lesson learned from your flight that others should be cognizant of? Just one, though.
I can start there. Scalability. So I mentioned Hopper was a small vehicle. It's about 3 feet tall, about 2 feet wide at the landing gear. That you want to be able to scale that up for longer missions. Hopper was built around a 5-hop plan with about 700 meter of range. But when you want to do longer missions, maybe you want to stay in the PSR longer, or you want to reach a hill or a deeper crater, you need to be able to scale your vehicles up. So keeping that in mind as you design your vehicle early on, keeping that in mind as you size your components is a big engineering design choice.
I would advocate for testing whatever system you're planning on providing for any of these surfaces, these environments. Testing pays off tenfold. It's a very expensive process, but it really troubleshoots and makes sure that your system is as bulletproof as possible.
Yeah, I would add definitely test, and I would say be paranoid. Be paranoid about everything that can go wrong, that doesn't go wrong in the lab, but just keep testing and keep thinking about the contingency scenarios. And And for us, I think we'd done some of that, but we didn't really appreciate until after landing how much we needed that, because we got the call that said, there's an issue, power is a constraint. What is the minimum amount of power you need for a minimum amount of time so you can still achieve some of your objectives and you can turn that network on? And we could answer that question very quickly because we had done those scenarios in the lab. We measured exactly how quickly we could turn the network on, what's the exact amount of power we needed. So think about not just the sunny day scenarios, because those are easy, but think about the things that could go wrong and how you react to all the different contingencies. And probably the one that will happen is not the one you planned for, but at least you have a lot of data from your scenario planning and your contingencies.
For EDS, I think testing is very important, definitely. I think our biggest lesson learned probably, overall, we need to make sure that we keep our actual objective in mind. For EDS, we relied heavily on making sure that we had great images and such. And we spent most of our development through the payload, making sure that we did all the testing. We went through all, TVAC, shock and vibe and everything. But I think we needed a lot more focus on making sure that, our images were focused well, that, we had redundancy in the lighting and such that we needed for our images. I think that's where we kind of really needed a little bit more focus.
4 words, another bumper sticker: test as you fly. And that is so critical. Okay, we've got lots of different questions that are, I'm going to try to synthesize them, that are related to, in general, what your next steps are, or do you plan to publish? How do you share your data or your lessons learned? Are there studies for how what you have learned could be incorporated into kind of the larger Artemis planning? And those sorts of things. Like, what are your general next steps, and how could people find out more of things that you're able to share? And Thierry, you've got the Artemis. Yep.
You want me to go? Okay. So a few things. In terms of next steps, we've announced last summer that we're working with Axiom Space to put cellular technology into their next-gen spacesuits, and we'll demonstrate cellular technology on the Artemis 3 mission. So that's a public announcement we've made. I think in general, in terms of next steps, we're looking to evolve the system that we flew on IM-2, looking to evolve that. I said it's a 4G system, so longer term, we're looking at how we evolve that to 5G. And I think we're just interested in partnering with anybody here or in the industry in general who thinks that they have a comms challenge and they need advanced comms. So we want to fly more missions. We want to partner with anybody and everybody in the US, certainly, but also globally. And you mentioned Artemis. We had also, a couple of years ago, we've done a study, and NASA had asked us what would it take to get 3G, whether it's 3GPP, whether it's 4G or 5G technology, ready for the Artemis timeframe. So we did a pretty comprehensive study on that, from an architecture design across hardware, software, reliability, all the way from the connectivity to the application layer. And there's a public version of that report that's available. If you look for Nokia Bell Labs, a system engineering and integration study, that's quite comprehensive, and it also laid out the roadmap for how you go from here to 4G or 5G on an Artemis 5 mission, and what are the steps that we should take in between.
And by the way, the Artemis folks had come to us when they realized that was actually a huge risk, a huge gap. I think it was, don't quote me, number 2 or 3 on their risk list. And they came and said, thank goodness, STMD, that y'all had gotten this started in 2020. And again, that's another example of why you have to start that technology maturation if you want it there by the time you need it. Any others in terms of how you might share data or what your next steps are?
Yeah, we're always looking to fly our vehicles again, so we're actively working on proposals for Hopper and partnerships, both national and international. There's other NASA partnerships we're looking at too, PRISM proposals and things like that. So actively looking for a next Hopper.
Yeah, from this mission specifically, there are several NASA blog posts out that talk about it, but I think our next steps is going to be publishing our data, putting it out there for everyone to see, and show the results and such, and hopefully people have a good idea of what the EDS can do. More generally, we are currently working with a lot of partners, both internal NASA, a lot of external partners, to help infuse this technology into future missions and such. And so I think next steps, we're also looking to license this technology as well for any industrial partners who are interested in developing this further and making their own EDSs and such. That's our major next steps.
From the Honeybee side, if you're a fan of Lister, I've got great news for you. We're flying Lister again on, I believe it's Draper's lander, in upcoming missions. We also have MMX, which has another PlanetVac system, so we'll see a few of the same sorts of hardware returning to the moon. I'm sure, as anybody up here has already said, and any of our commercial partners in the audience or in the community would also say everybody's always open to talking about what they're doing and how they can collaborate with other entities and effectively use the capabilities that we all have or derive new uses and applications for those capabilities. So I always say reach out to any of us up here, anybody in the audience. LSIC does a really good job compiling some test facility resources in the LSIC wiki, as well as entities that post in the LSIC forum and some of the lists in LSIC about what technologies they're working on, maturing, and trying to advance in general. So those are other great resources to reach out to those of us here who are trying to achieve these big, lofty goals.
Great. And one last question, if folks' stomachs aren't growling too loudly. I think this one's a perfect one to kind of end on. So a key aspect of all the different technologies that you've talked here and missions is that they are all core foundational infrastructure capabilities that you would need to operate on any surface, and also to create a burgeoning commercial lunar ecosystem on the moon. So given this, can you talk a little bit about if your technologies have extensibility to other locations, such as Mars potentially, and what you can learn on the moon from that would apply?
I mean, yeah, we definitely looked into what it would take to fly a hopper in a different body. It all comes down to propulsive system. So how much thrust do you need to get up in the air? So because the way we've developed hopper, as I mentioned scalability earlier, that was an early part of our design process. So while it would not be an identical hopper, we would be able to use many of the same GNC and software, many of the same components scaled up for a different planetary body.
For EDS,
Can you hear me?
Oh, Tibor?
Yeah, go ahead.
Go ahead,
Yeah,
Tibor.
can you hear me? Maybe just a short notice. We are also working on our next missions, and regarding other celestial bodies, we have been already asked if we could use the fully snooper on Mars as well, on potential helicopter missions. So we would be more than happy to make measurements on Mars as well.
Excellent. Thank you, Tibor. Go ahead, Joe.
Yeah, for EDS, I said it earlier, but originally the EDS was developed when we started looking for space applications it was developed for Mars. It works very well with Martian simulants in a Martian atmosphere. So we're pretty ready to be able to transition over to that. We're not currently actively working on that development, but it should be easy to transition over to that. And pretty much any planetary body now, demonstrating on the moon kind of shows us that it's a very successful technology that should work for any system.
Can you talk some about,
Yeah, from the Honeybee side, a lot of our capabilities are pretty versatile across different planetary surfaces. As I mentioned before, we've been on Mars. We have hardware that will be going to the Mars planetary system. Rotary percussive drills are very versatile. We're even flying one on APL's favorite flying mission, Dragonfly, right? We're providing the sampling system for that. Again, an unknown surface, very versatile capability to do very great sample acquisition, handling, and science. So a lot of the Planovac, Lister, again, it's kind of whatever environment you're trying to sample from or collect samples from. There's probably a solution in that trade space that could involve a Planovac, a Lister, or a rotary percussive drill.
So from a communication perspective, I would say the core technology that we would deploy on the lunar surface for communication on the surface is extensible to Mars as well. One of the things that we would need to redo is simulate the RF propagation environment, which was one of the things we were hoping to accomplish on the IM-2 mission, to take measurements and then calibrate the measurements against the simulation models. So that would definitely look to redo that for the Mars environment. The one big change from a communication perspective is when you look at how you connect Earth to the Moon or Earth to Mars. Just the delay to Mars will completely force us to rethink the communication architecture and how do we handle that 15 to 20 minute one-way delay, which is going to the Moon is already a long delay as far as we're concerned from a communication perspective, but going to Mars will be so much more challenging, and that might trigger us to think of completely different protocols as well as how we actually communicate and what is our expectation on Earth of when we get the data. So there's definitely no real-time robotic control from the Moon back to Earth, and even less from Mars back to Earth. So I think it's more the long haul that will be different versus the on-surface communication.
Yes, a true paradigm shift, and I think, we truly become Earth independent, and I think we have to practice that on the Moon, yeah. So I do want to just take a moment and give everybody here a real round of applause. They've had no sleep for years, and they've been to the Moon. So let's find more ways to get us all back there as soon as possible. Thank you so much. Everybody go grab a bite to eat.
All right, just a quick note. You can order from the pizza truck from your phone. The other one you can't, so you have to go up there and stand. They'll be here the entire lunchtime. They're out there out front. Also, there's networking lunches going on in the breakout room, so grab your lunch, go sit, have some conversation. And there is Lunabotics and Techport there's Lunabotics being streamed this whole time, and Techport in the main dining hall if that's something you'd like to see. We will see you after lunch.
Recording stopped.